Hey you, come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast where we talk about everything we love in the world of JRPGs and other Eastern titles. I am your host, Cameron Hawkins. Along, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing good today. I'm really excited for us to have a nice group chat right now because we're actually joined by an additional Kevin today, and I'm really hoping I don't get our wires crossed on who's talking to who.
Yeah, this is our first guest on the show.
I'm the first one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such an honor.
But this is also a special episode because this is not our weekly episode. But before we get into that, let me introduce our friend of the show, Kevin Diaz. Kevin, how you doing?
Greetings, salutations. Doing good. Just just looking back on a year,
Mm-hmm.
of this beautiful anniversary. Well, technically it's going to be every 4 years.
Technically,
So like every 4 years we should really go crazy for it.
Yeah,
But
we're doing the day before the
indeed,
anniversary because
indeed,
February 29th is not a thing this
Does
year.
not exist this year.
Indeed.
Yep, not an option.
Nope. Not yet.
But for those that don't know you, Kev, please tell us about yourself.
Yeah. I am a content syndication editor at IGN. Do all that fun stuff over there, and I run a PlayStation channel called PlayStation Source, where you can check out PlayStation centric stuff whenever I have time to make videos. You know what I'm saying? Because life be busy, man. Life's a lot. Life's a lot. But catch my thoughts on X, etc. I think that's what they call it these days.
Yeah, we
all
call
that
it Twitter
stuff,
here,
but,
but
yeah.
that's fine.
I prefer Twitter. I still
Yeah.
call it Twitter, but
I sometimes call it dead to me, but that's a whole other.
That's fair. That's who.
That's fair.
That's who.
Yeah.
That's who. But yeah, we're just a pleasure to be. Also, huge honor to not only be the first guest on Party Chat, but have it be a silo dedicated episode. Not in the main rigmarole of Party Chat.
I had to roll out the red carpet for you today.
I got an exclusive episode. Very cool. Very
Yeah.
nice.
It's actually really funny. I remember back when Rebirth was coming out, I think you and I were just in DMs or something and just oh yeah, we got to talk about this game. And here we are a year later, finally.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because we normally do weekly episodes. We do one weekly episode, and then anything that is a review or a interview, which we hope to do many in the future, a preview, anything like that. If it doesn't fall on the day of a new episode, we just release it to the public when available, because it's just how it is.
Right.
It's just easier that way. So this is going out on a Friday, which our normal weekly releases are on Thursday. So it's a pretty big, pretty substantial week, right? We got the Monster Hunter Wilds review, which came out on Monday.
Yep.
And then we have a weekly episode coming out tomorrow, and then we have this coming out on Friday. So 3 episodes this week.
And on top of that, you had a guest spot this week that went up this morning, Wednesday, with JRPG Pursuit. So it's been a busy podcasting week for us.
It has been. But before we get into what we're talking about for this episode, we want to go through some housekeeping. If you enjoy this show, please give it a 5-star review on any podcast platform of your choice. Go to youtube.com, search Party Chat, a JRPG podcast, and give us a sub over there as well, where you can watch our video version. It helps with exposure, allowing us to monetize and get money, because we want to get, we're doing this as a passion project. We also like to get money.
Well, and to help cover doing this endeavor, because this is this is time and resources, and there's stuff we want to invest in to make this better. So
exactly. And on top of that, if you want to support us financially directly, you can go to our Patreon, where we have a bunch of different tiers giving a myriad of rewards, like getting our weekly episodes a day early. We have Campfire Catalog, our book club podcast, which will be on Chrono Trigger for our inaugural episode, a monthly Q&A episode, which we will be recording for February's Q&A sometime very soon. It's probably sometime next week. And so and we have the exclusive Discord where we talk about video games and non-video games, a bunch of stuff. I talked about how Treasure Planet is mid, having watched it for the first time. Yeah, just no. Kevin, you just need to
I'm so glad.
watch
Come on.
just watch the weekly episode that drops tomorrow, and you can hear my whole rant about Treasure Planet. Because I think I make some good points, and I don't think Kevin is super far off from how I feel about it either. So
to be fair, again, like I haven't seen it in so long that like I'm like, what you're saying sounds right to me. I kind of need a fresh watch to like confirm my feelings.
Yeah.
But if it's like, if it's the same experience I had finally watching Atlantis, it makes sense. Like, it's not bad. Bad's not the word I want to use. It's just
yeah, it's not bad. It's
it's
just
a
mid.
movie. It is certainly one of the Disney films of all time. Like,
like I can understand watching that movie because we're all around the same age. I can understand watching that movie at like 8, 9 years old and thinking it's the coolest shit ever.
I love
it's Pirates and Space.
Watching it for the first time as a 30-year-old that has been told time and time again that this is low-key one of the best Disney movies, and then watching it and it's just not even close.
All right. I'm gonna pump the brakes though, because we can't have 2 podcasts in a row.
Yeah, we're not gonna have no. We're not. No. I was gonna stop it right there. I was gonna stop it right there.
Reel it in.
I was gonna stop it right there.
Reel it in.
Lastly, go to youtube.com/Kevin Kenson. Give him a sub. He's trying to get to 1 million subscribers before the end of the year. Give him some love. Do that.
And lastly, go to PS Source to give love to the other Kevin on this podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You know,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Got to support the homies.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Well,
and also, really quick, what Kevin kind of said earlier, I'm on the latest episode of JRPG Pursuit podcast. You can find that on YouTube and podcast services as well. Shout out to the crew over there. Kev, what were you gonna say?
It's not important. No, it's okay.
Okay.
It was okay.
But the reason why you are listening to this episode is because we are doing a full, no holds barred spoiler cast on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Kev, we brought you on here because Final Fantasy VII Remake became your favorite game of all time.
Yes, it did.
When that game came out, you ended up going back to the original Final Fantasy VII, playing that because you needed to know the rest of the story. And so it only felt right to invite you on and talk about possibly your new favorite game of all time. But how I want to start this off is I just want to talk about general thoughts. Like, we're not going into the nitty gritty yet, but I want to like talk about like the general aspects of what we like, what we didn't like, and then kind of dig in from there. Kev, being the guest, let's start with you. How you feel about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Like, looking back on it, it came out a year ago, right? And I still think very highly about that game. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think the one now, like, obviously there's a lot of things that stand out about Rebirth being, in my opinion, like the scale of that world and how it's actually insane how much there is to do. Some would argue there's too much. That's I think a fair thing to critique this game on to a certain degree. But I'm just impressed at like the scale, the amount of production value, the like how much this game screams of like, yes, we had like a crazy budget and like this is like a AAA package, you know what I'm saying, like brought to the market. And I think what's the one thing that has stood over the last few months and over the last year, basically, of experiencing Rebirth and playing it and all that, and then going without it, is that I think that there's like so much game in there, right? It took me 110 hours to beat, right? And I did basically everything. The only things I didn't complete were literally the last quest of
Queen's Blood.
Queen's Blood, thank you. Yeah, that, and then I didn't do oh my god, what is that called? The like very end like boss rush things where you had the Gilgamesh stuff. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Okay. My bad. Yeah, I didn't beat those two things. So basically, I did everything else, right? And I think where Rebirth maybe falls a little bit short, maybe not necessarily its fault, but I think that there were because of remakes, I think like lesser scale and more focused scale, if you will, allowed certain story beats to really permeate and hit. Granted, that was my first time experiencing Final Fantasy VII, so that could be a very like skewed and biased take because of that fact. But I think there is something there of truth where I think that Rebirth's like most impactful story moments or, you know, most critical storylines, I think kind of get a little bit melded out in lieu of this whole massive adventure that you're going on, which is great because I do think that Rebirth is one of like the few games in my life where it's like, yeah, like that was a literal journey and adventure where you're going on into multiple different areas of this expansive world, you know? And that's great, but I think maybe at a cost to some of the more potent story moments overall in the game. But I love the game, obviously. Gameplay is basically perfect, you know, so I still think very highly of it, in my opinion, you know. Definitely.
Cool. Kevin, you just finished this game last night.
Oh,
so
really?
Yes.
Oh, look at you.
Yes.
Look at
Yeah.
you.
So
There we go.
Look, 24 was not. This is fresh. This is fresh for me. 24 was not my best year for finishing games I started, and I'm working on that right now. But I made it a point to finish this, not just for this chat, but also because like I did want to get it before the 1 year mark. But yeah, this is all very fresh for me. You know, I think kind of like broad strokes, I agree a lot with what other Kevin was saying as far as just like the general vibe of the game. I do think, you know, a big trade-off for me that I keep going back and forth on is whether or not the side content was too much. Because like there's a part of me that eats that stuff up. Like I like doing side stuff. I'm always like I gotta do all the side quests. I gotta like when I play a Like a Dragon game, I'm doing every sub quest I can before I move on in the story, you know, and I did the same thing here with Rebirth. And while I enjoyed doing that stuff, I absolutely had occasional moments getting through it where I was like, yo, can I just like do the main story now? Like, can I like hold on, wait, why is there's this much? Like I distinctly remember specifically like leaving Coral being like, man, Coral was a huge zone, so they're probably gonna make them smaller like up ahead. Nope. The last zone's like a little smaller. All the other ones were like the same size for a while, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that concept of how that I think impacts storytelling a bit, because this has always been one of my like big complaints about FF15 was that, you know, 15 has this very awkward pacing where there's really good story beats, and then it's like, cool, now drive around in your car for 3 hours, and we'll get to the next story beat at some point.
Yeah.
And 7 Rebirth doesn't feel as painful with that because I think the side stuff's a little more engaging. I think the side quests are a lot better done, and there's a ton of variety in minigames. But at the same time, it still absolutely detracts where there's moments of like, hey, we really gotta get on this plane and go take care of this right now. Or what if you fully explore the zone, defeat a bunch of special monster missions, like, you know, clear all this other stuff, pick up a game of Fort Condor, because that's just a thing right now in this zone specifically. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I go back and forth on whether or not I like that, or if it was just like a bit too much. Because the problem is, I think a lot of it individually is good. Like, I don't really have a complaint about any of the games. Just that I had to learn so many back to back within a very dense season of like also wanting to get through the story. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. And just to kind of like bleed into your point too, like there's been an argument made by a lot of people of like they should have had a lot of the mini games be just at Gold Saucer.
Sure.
Instead of melded into the different regions.
I think that game, I think also divorcing them a little bit more, because like there's this concept of like, is side content actually side content? Because like Queen's Blood gets interjected into the main story a little bit where there's like an unavoidable, like you can avoid the tournament, but only by joining it and then just being like, nah, I'm out. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But like the game very much is like kind of pushing you to do it. And then like there's multiple mini games that are a part of the Gilgamesh side quest. So it's like, oh, this Gilgamesh thing seems cool, but I need to learn Fort Condor. I need to learn this robot mini game. I need to do this like cactuar killing mini game as Yuffie. It's just a whole thing that's like, I got to engage with how many different things to do this one thing that seems kind of actually important. Okay. Yeah, so it's a little overwhelming. Another thing I do want to just like completely sing praises though of is the combat. Like I really do love, I think Remake was a great first step in this direction. I think Rebirth pretty much just like across the board made improvements to this. Uh,
Mhm.
Every party member has their distinct way of handling and playing. They all have unique mechanics that make them interesting and well suited for certain situations. Uh, Synergy skills are super freaking cool. Uh, like just across the board, like I just love that combat. I think it's such an excellent blend of having an action core, but embracing a lot of things that feel like a good ode to the classic turn-based gameplay. Like whether that's needing to exploit certain weaknesses on enemies, paying attention to enemy attack patterns, just so well done.
Yeah.
And then I got a whole lot of
go
ranting about the ending stuff, but we'll get to that to a spoiler section.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
Yeah,
a whole other
for
bag of
sure.
worms.
For sure.
Ian, how
that's
about
for sure.
that
Yeah,
can be a whole
yeah.
podcast in and of itself. Like I'm actually kind of curious how long we're going to go on to talk about the ending of this game. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what everyone's saying. I think like overall general thoughts. Yeah, the combat in this game is my second favorite combat system after Kingdom Hearts 2. Like it is just it is basically perfect to me. I think like the only thing that's like kind of an issue still, even though they definitely made it much better from Remake, is just aerial combat if you're playing as Cloud. Because like, most of the time you're playing as Cloud, right? Like that's just kind of the reality. They made that better with like the wind projectiles. But it's still not perfect. And I don't think it ever will be in that sense. And that is what that is. But I think it's like perfectly okay. It's perfectly competent with what the upgrades that they've done from Remake to Rebirth. When it comes to the general aspects of the mini games, I do think that there are too many, and I do think some of them are like not good to just like why does this exist? Not that even it's bad. It's just like oh, you wanted Red 13 to have a mini game, and it's like a really bad version of like Rocket League type deal, and that is what that is. Um, but I think my main issue more so about the mini games is that I kind of hate how they're all implemented in a way where you just like talk to someone and it loads into you doing it, and it's not like it's not like there's not like a
Mm.
transitional gameplay aspect to the mini games in and of themselves.
Sure.
And I kind of understand why, because they have like the leaderboards, right? You have to get the 3 stars to get the achievements or the trophy and all that jazz. I can understand that to a certain extent. But like when you get to certain points in the story and you get to these unique set pieces that don't really uh re- replicate the normal minute to minute gameplay that you experience in Rebirth, and they're able to do that. I'm just like, I wish y'all did that with the mini games too.
Mm.
I wish it was a little bit more like not having to hold triangle to start, and then like loading screen, and then the whole like POV changes and things like that. I wish it was more like slick, because everything else about this game does feel so like modern and high budget, that type of thing, but then we're still stuck doing some things that uh we've been doing since the PS2.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like I just wish
I
that there was a little bit more advancement there.
Sure, I get that. Like you want like when you get into the Queen's Blood game, you want like a quick little scene of like seeing Cloud sit at the table and it's like here we are across from each other and like zoom in on the board, and it's like there's a very natural progression of like how your, whatever, exploration walking around phase transitions into that instead of just like
Right.
Yeah.
fade to black and suddenly we're in this whole other UI. I
Yeah, exactly.
I will say personally that's never really bothered me, but like I get it. I do get where
Yeah.
you're coming from on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I'll say too, I mean, like, this this game, for as impressive it is with its regions, with the way it looks in some certain areas and some certain scenarios, let's say, I think largely in the open world, I think it doesn't look as good as like you would imagine coming off of like Remake, for example, right? And no, like, because I was gonna say like maybe it was a bit of a different context, like going from like, for example, like Remake Intergrade on PS5 into Rebirth, right? And now with the Pro, like it looks how I wish it looked when I
Yeah.
played it. You know
Well,
what I'm saying? Yeah.
to play off that, I
But
think part of what that is a matter of like density and
for
intentional
sure.
like in creation. Because with remake, it's a very narrow focus, right? There's
Hmm.
this very specific pathing you're going through. It's in a very dense city, and they're able to kind of handcraft all those environments for you. And while they can do that with like a larger zone game, that's a hell of a lot more work. So you
Right,
end up
right.
with,
Yeah.
still attention to detail, but you're also ending up with a lot of like, look, we just have to make a huge forest and we got to figure
Yeah.
out the layout of it and make it interesting and make it navigatable and functional and etc. I think a really good highlight of this actually is, one of the parts where the game does shine is like going to the gold saucer, right? And that's an enclosed
Hmm.
space. That's something where they can like really fill out the details a lot more.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I think that's a natural cost of like having the big zones and going with a wider area. Because I totally agree with you. I think there's a stronger kind of lived in feeling with Midgar and the way that world is versus like now I'm out on this open plain in Seven Rebirth and like cool, there's some windmills here with a guy there I can talk to. It looks good, it doesn't look bad, but there's not
Yeah.
quite the same kind of like density and detail as in remake.
And like at the end of the day, like I'm just pointing out, that like it didn't look as good as Remake, but um to achieve that dream of remaking Final Fantasy VII, right? And it I think helps with the context of like having the original in mind, because like that this is the truest form of what it would have been like to play the original Final Fantasy VII if it was made like today. You know, I think that vision that they originally had to where they're at with where they to what they had to do with Rebirth, like I think they pulled that off.
Mhm.
And having these massive open spaces where you before you're in a very linear section, which is Midgar, right? The first 4 hours of the main game, of the original game. I meant to say, like
Yes, yeah.
that first 4 hours, like is very linear and very tight, and then you go into these massive open zones where you're in, what's the world called? Gaia, like
Gaia.
you're throughout Gaia, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for that trade off, like to capture the vision, it's a fair trade off,
Yeah, I've
And
never
Pro definitely helps it. Pro definitely it definitely helps it
I didn't
a lot.
really take issue with the visuals in this game. I think the only issue that like I really had visually that kind of was like continuously distracting to a certain extent was just how the hair looked
Mm.
Mm.
in for the characters, and I think that's an issue that like Square Enix uh has had in the past, like Kingdom Hearts 3, like some of the characters hairs, like Sora's hair doesn't look particularly great in certain scenes. And like another issue, like small issue, like that's just like it's one of those things like why is this a thing, but not in a like in a annoying way, but just like why is this only happening in these scenarios? So like sometimes when you um talk with one of the party members, um their face is just so white,
Yeah.
and it's just
Oh,
like,
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
I
it
do
just
remember.
and it happens a lot, and it's just like why
Yes.
is it so white specifically in this moment?
Yeah.
um
There's
and but
areas in Seven Rebirth where it's very washed out, and that you see
Yeah.
that on the skin tones and the hair. Absolutely.
yeah, and so like, but again, it's not something that like was super annoying or anything, but it's definitely something that I took notice of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um and but yeah, and then I think the other, the biggest thing about this game, which is like my biggest issue, is the story, and in the sense of like what Remake set up and like very much teased at the end of that game doesn't translate to what Rebirth is. And that is what, and that's not even talking about the ending of itself, but more of just like the experience of going through this game. Which, you know, for those that don't remember or for some reason are listening to this but didn't play Remake, the end of Remake, you basically defy destiny, fate, and it very much gives you the sense of like, hey, anything can happen now.
Yeah.
Anything is up for grabs. And there are, the notorious Aerith death scene in this game that gave people the kind of like mentality like, oh shit, Aerith could live. Like that was kind of like the main thing that people kind of got away, like, walked away with there. But I think that in general, it was just like, oh, we're not doing things in order of what Final Fantasy VII was. And we do get that. We get that to a certain extent. But I just don't think it strayed off the beaten path enough. I think it needed more. But it's also going to be interesting because the next game, there are a few things that already happened, if I remember correctly, by this point in the story, in the original, that is no longer the case, like Rocket Town and Wutai, and like those are, even though Wutai is technically optional in the original, those are big parts of that game. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how those are going to be executed as well. But for the sake of Rebirth, and I also want to preface, even though we've gone pretty deep, we're starting to get deep here, that it's a little hard to, like, Rebirth is definitely going to be the game of these three where we have the most potential to change our minds once this third game comes out.
Yeah.
Because this game is serving this weird situation that we don't normally experience in video games, where this is not a sequel, this is a part 2 of a 3-part story. And so with it ending in my opinion such a weird way, there's just so many like question marks that could be like fixed if once we play the third game and we know how the third game and how the story kind of continues. But right now it's like a very I don't feel good about this because I don't know what's going to happen next. Because it is based off of something that we already know, and so we have the context of what the story is like supposed to kind of be, but then we also are being omitted information, and so it's just like this weird middle ground, if that makes sense. Kevin, it sounds like you wanted to say something.
Well, just like
no,
sorry.
Kevin
Kenson.
You see,
Kevin Kenson.
You see,
yes, I said Kevin Kev.
It was bound to happen.
Kevin 1,
once.
Kevin 2.
It wasn't my fuck. No, anyways, just what I wanted to say was like, kind of going off what you're saying too. If we have the blueprint of the previous game, like the original one, to go off of, the other thing that also raises questions is not just where we're seeing differences in how they're going to like wrangle this all together in the third one, and if they're going to stick the landing or not. There's a lot of original game left. Like we're only up to like the halfway point, and we only have one game left in the remakes. So we're 2 out of 3 games in, and given Midgar originally was like 4 hours, so they really, extended that out. But there's a lot of the original left, and so that raises the question, right? Of like, are they going to condense that? Are we going to cut some things out? Is it going to be a little faster? Because like I also don't know. I know the kind of theory right now is the next one's going to focus a lot on like the airship for travel, and so maybe there's a little like less focus on zones and open exploration, more just like, we're flying point A to point B. We got to go to all these plot points and do their stuff, and that's what matters right now. I don't know, but there's a lot of ground to cover still. If the goal is to try and like adapt a lot of the elements left, because like you said, Wutai, that was originally in this part of the story. That's now like we have to wait for the next one, supposedly, for it to show up, and all kinds of other areas that we haven't done yet.
Yeah. It's interesting. But yeah, like let's start to like dig in a little bit more on on the mini games, because we talked, we've been kind of skirting around them a little bit, and I want to leave the story stuff for last, because that's definitely going to be like the biggest can of worms of discussion and things like that, that I just think that that's best to say for last.
Yeah, that's
But
how we hit 3 hours.
yeah, exactly, by the time we hit 3 hours. But with the mini games, I do think most of them are fun, most of them are good, and I don't want to say just mini games, but just like mini games side content. Because I do think all of the side content that aren't directly related to mini games per se, like the non proto relic stuff, like the proto relic stuff, I like all of that stuff. I
Yeah,
like, we
that
brought back Fort Condor. For some reason they made it worse than the intergrade version though, which
hmm
I don't know if y'all agree with that, but I was just
I
like,
agree.
wait, why did they get rid of this? Why did they get rid of this? Like they made it less good, which I thought was
Yeah,
very interesting. Did y'all have anything to say about Fort Condor? No?
I just loved it in Intergrade, and
It
like
was
I
so
just think,
good.
yeah, it was like addicting in Intergrade, where like
Yeah.
I straight up was like, this should be its separate game, and like the analog to that in this game is not Condor, it's Queen's Blood, you know,
Yeah.
in my opinion, we're like
Oh, Queen's
Queen's
Blood's
Blood.
definitely the mini game of
Yeah.
this game for sure.
Yeah, like that one hit that quality of like, oh no, this is like so fun that it should be like a Gwent style, like own separate thing. Um, but yeah, I don't know. They just like made it a little bit more like, I don't know what but like just a little bit more monotonous, like a little bit more like, I don't know, more of like a grueling thing to win as opposed to like using certain strategy that you could use in Intergrade that I
Yeah, it
think
felt
had a
slower.
more, yeah, definitely a lot more of a like slog to get wins in Condor in Rebirth as opposed to Intergrade, but
Mhm.
or I guess intermission DLC. But I still liked it. It just definitely is worse in Rebirth for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was cool. How did y'all feel about, because this is one that I feel like is divisive. Like everyone I've talked to about this mini game, they hated it, but I liked it. And
So
I'm curious as to how y'all feel about it. It's the one in the it's the one in the Red 13 region. I forgot the name of the
Cosmo
region.
Canyon.
Cosmo
Osmond.
Canyon, where it's like you have these little, it's like that kind, not like tower defense,
The
but you have like
robots
these,
with the
the robots. Yeah,
yeah.
you have the robots that are like trying to protect the you're trying to like not die, and there's like the flan like enemies coming towards you and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I really liked that one. That was the
I
one that was
mean,
behind the the Jesse
Yeah.
and the Jesse like side quests.
incredible side quest. Incredible side quest. But
Did you like the game though?
it's
I
all
liked it.
right.
I
I'm
I
not
think
like, yeah, it's all right.
I didn't
Yeah.
dislike that minigame. I think for me, it while they are different, it felt a little too close to Fort Condor to me of like, cool, we have another minigame that involves like deploying units at a certain rhythm, making sure you pick the right unit type to counter the right enemy unit type. Like it was almost like, why didn't you just like fill out Fort Condor some more and make a second Fort Condor section or something? Like it I didn't mind the minigame on its own. I just like it felt uh unnecessary to me when Fort Condor exists. Like they just fill such a similar vertical.
It's fair.
That's fair. No,
Yeah,
I
I
can
feel that.
definitely understand that for sure.
I just didn't find
Um,
it that crazy engaging. I don't know. Like, well, not bad. Just I don't
Yeah.
know. Just a mini game. Like that one kind of
yeah,
felt like the mini games of mini games. That I
I
don't
will
know.
say I
Yeah.
actually liked it. I liked it more than the Fort Condor in Rebirth. I don't know if I like it more than Intermissions. I think Intermissions is better, but
oh yeah,
like I think between I don't know, something about Fort Condor in Rebirth I did not vibe. Maybe it was just because the last stage sucked on like the regular difficulty. I just did not. I was not programmed for it, but because that
okay.
took me a few tries.
Well, I guess my question is that like, what are some of the outside of Queen's Blood? Because I do want to talk about Queen's Blood. What were some of the mini games that you really liked, and then some that more so that you didn't like?
For some reason, I've never heard anyone say this sentence. I really liked Red 13's like Rocket League one. Like I don't know why. Like
Why? It's bad.
it
It's
just
not
sounds like
good.
he just seemed like he was having fun. You know what I'm saying? Like he was just out here, man. Like everyone's doing all this crazy shit. Red 13 just gonna play some soccer, man. Like he was having a great time. You
I
know
will
what I'm
say, while I
saying?
didn't
He was
love
having a
that
great
mini game
time.
that much, that was one of the funniest moments to me realizing it was Rocket League. Or I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
we're gonna do mini game. We're like, this is Rocket League. Like, what are you talking about
No,
right
it's
now? Like,
so
what?
good.
Like, this is what we're doing? Like, okay.
Yeah, I really liked it. Chocobo racing, pretty fun,
Chocobo
pretty
Racing was
fun,
good.
I
Yeah.
like Chocobo
pretty
Racing.
fun. Very good, very good. Um, yeah, dude. Do you have any, Kevin? I'm trying to.
So as far as like mini games I enjoyed, Chocobo Racing is definitely up there. Queen's
Sure.
Blood, that's a whole separate conversation. I will say one that bothered me a lot, also Chocobo related, the frickin' floating mini game that you do in Cosmo
Oh
2,
Oh
my
where
my
you're like
gosh,
trying to
god,
no.
drift the right
Yeah,
dude.
way and then
man.
lift on the
Yeah,
Fuck
no. It's a hard
that.
it also
no.
took me so
Dude.
long to realize that by default it had motion controls on, and that's why I was like messing up half the time because I was like, why am I
Oh,
having problems with this? And then I realized, oh, because it's having
yeah,
like
the
motion
motion.
control stuff with the DualSense, and like
Yeah,
that stuff's
no.
cool when you know it's happening. But when
That
it's
was
just
Yeah, for
on
sure.
by default and you're not really
Yeah,
bored about
no.
it,
It's all right though.
that was
I hated that one so much, so very
that
much.
was the last mini game that I needed to get the 3 stars for to get the trophy. And I was turning into the Joker, y'all. Like, because the
I feel
last
you.
one was just you had to go like basically as low as possible, and
Yeah,
then
and then
go up,
swing up.
and then fly around to the right, and then land perfectly on this platform. And I just couldn't do it. And I was like, I reviewed the game, so I had the game early, and I was messaging Kyle, my buddy Kyle Prawl, who does PR for 47, and I was just like, bro, how do you do this? Like, because he did it. And I was just like,
Yeah.
bro, how? And he like he sent me a video that someone else, I guess, sent him about how to do it because he also was having troubles. And I'm like, I I have literally I have literally followed this video to a T, done the exact same things that this person's doing, and I still can't get it done. And so when it finally happened, dude, I was on the verge. Like, I basically wanted to break down and cry because I was like so happy that my torture was over.
Safe to
It
say
was
that
it
one
was
sucks.
ridiculous. It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
that one sucks. There's a couple actually. The more I think about it, there's a couple that I would say suck. There's a lot of good ones too, but I hated that one. I hated. Oh, I just had it and it left me. Okay, well I
I
tried to
have
remember this
one.
other one. The Moogle, the Mog.
Yes, I was about to say that. Yeah,
The
it's
Moogle
just
ones,
like
that was fine. That
No,
was fun.
look.
no,
First off,
it was kind of annoying.
that Mog design is an abomination against God and all
That's
that is
true. That's
holy.
true.
Yeah,
And the mini, it was
yeah.
just it wasn't. It was just like, hey, like wrangle these guys up and don't get touched 3 times or it's over for reasons. I did not. Also, the ending of that whole side quest, like when you do successfully do all the mini
Worth
games,
it.
nightmare fuel.
Worth it though. Worth it. To hear Cloud say Koopo.
Nightmare fuel. This is like I've
That's
had
the
nightmares of this
funniest.
exact scenario.
Koopo
I
Pole
still
and
see
he's
their teeth in
flying.
my
No, that's shit.
dreams. Like I just
No, yo, that made it all worth it to me, man. That was a good laugh I had, man. That was good.
oh,
That was a good one.
what
That
was the
was
other
a
one I
good
hated?
laugh.
There was another one I hated. It'll come back to me. There's one more that I was angry about, but there was other good ones too. Like, yeah, the
Yeah.
Chocobo Racing's great. As short-lived as it was, I liked the little like rail shooter that's in Golden Saucer. I thought that was a good
Yes.
time.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
fun. Very
Yeah.
fun. Very
Yeah.
good. Yep. Very fun.
Like, that's the thing I'll say is that like most of the mini games like feel like that they have a purpose than just being like a mini game. There are some like that I'm just like, okay, I don't think this needs to be here. Like, because when you get to Costa del Sol, it's like, yeah, it's a beach episode. You're supposed to be doing fun stuff. But just knowing that the Gold Saucer also exists, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, did we really need like this shooting gallery mini game? It's fun, I guess, but it's just like that's when it started to like when you kind of like look back at everything you've done, and then you like think about like kind of the ones that just did this really need to be here? Did
Yeah.
this really need to be
Well,
here?
and that really ties into one of my complaints was the fact that like I just wish a lot more of the side content was like purely side content. Like I know a few people where Costa de Celos where they were like, you know what, maybe this game isn't for me because they were just like, I don't care about the beach episode. Like why am I suddenly having to do this?
Yeah.
Well,
I remember the other minigame I hate, the
Cat-
cactar.
Yep, I was about to say that too. Yep. Yeah.
are you talking about the one for Kid G?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be
yeah.
just
I
that
love that one.
It might be that I'm
I
just
love that
stuck
one.
on it right now and frustrated and salty and angry.
Man. Dude.
That might have something to do with it. Maybe I'll figure it out and unlock it and be like, oh wait, never mind, I like this. But right now I hate it.
Yo.
Oh, I love it.
Are you having trouble with Aerith? That's what I had trouble with, man.
Aerith was okay, the first one. I'm having trouble right now with the because so in order to finish the game in time for this, I did like not finish all the side quests, which I do want to go back and do, but I wanted to be able to talk about the ending.
For sure.
So I'm on the third Kid G, so it's the second Yuffie one, and like I get it, I know what I'm supposed to do. It's just the RNG of what mode the cactars are in and what move they're using, and like switching between Yuffie's two attack styles. I'm not about it. I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, I really like it. I really like it.
I'm not about it.
I just remember being frustrated with Aerith having to do that. Because, like, Cloud, Tifa, Yuffie is very, very speedy combat.
Yeah.
Characters. As opposed to Aerith, where she's very much, very, like, can you swing faster? Like, come on. Like, come on. Like, come on. Like, we gotta do this, But, yeah. That one, not my least favorite, but definitely I remember annoyances and frustration. Yeah, for sure.
And then one last one I'll throw out. I know I'm just hating on all the minigames right now. It's not even really a minigame, but it's like a lightly minigame mechanic they added. The section where you're playing primarily as Kate Sith.
Bro.
Like, it was just like,
are you talking about in the mansion?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get through this now. I don't really care that much about Kate Sith. I don't need a box throwing minigame in the middle of this. Like, just
dude,
let's move on.
I was so mad too because I was like playing that game before, I was playing that game, and I just finished that box, like the little mini game inside of the elevator where the boxes come, and it's just like literally right when I finish it, and the game auto saves. So my friend tells me, who's ahead of me, like, oh yeah, if you have to knock out 10 of those to get one of Johnny's treasures, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me that before I did this? Because he knew I was doing it.
And why is that so?
Why didn't you say something?
That's such a random thing to just be like, oh, by the way, there's a secret here. That's like not a fun secret. That's just like a why.
Yeah.
Why?
No, there are a bunch of like things. Not a bunch, but there's enough in this game where there's just random like things that you would not remotely think of in a real way. That like, oh, this is going to be one of Johnny's treasures if I do this. Like, it's it's a little weird. But yeah, in most cases, I like most of the mini games. I just like think that there's a few too many. Too many. Oh, actually, one I do want to shout out is the fighting one, where you're in the poly figure.
Yeah,
the golden saucer.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably
fun.
My favorite mini game in the game.
That's really good one.
It's really
very fun.
It's
very fun.
I showed my wife like the intro to that one because it's the whole intro to the gold saucer, and I'm like, you're not ready for how like we just walk up. Like imagine going up to Disneyland and this is everything that just happened suddenly. Like
it's really incredible.
So
yeah, no,
it's so fun.
No, yeah.
Definitely.
What should we talk about next? Speaking of the golden saucer, I do want to talk about this really quick. Well, it's on my mind, and so I don't forget. I really hate how these dates are like non-canon. You know what I mean? Like what's the purpose of these dates if they're not going to mean something for the actual story at large?
Hey, mine was canon. Listen,
it's canon.
Listen, it's
I don't know about
this
yours.
is a Cloti podcast. This is a Cloti podcast.
Wait, actually, wait, Kev, where are you on this? Kev, are you Cloti or Clarith?
Oh, I'm Cloti.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
cool.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
we're
Oh,
good.
of course, of
I
course.
thought we were
This is
gonna have
a
to end this
close-
early and
of
kick
course,
you out.
yo.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. This is a
Gentlemen,
Clotey.
gentlemen, this is a safe space.
Yeah, this is a Clotey panel.
Safe space,
If you,
gentlemen.
nah,
Safe space.
nah, Aerith is Zach's girl. Like, if
That's
you
what
don't think
I'm
otherwise, like, you're
saying. I'm
just
sick. I'm
I
sick
will
and
Even the
tired of this
game-
debate,
as a
man.
Clotey fan, the game does put some work into the other theory, though, especially near the end, which will.
It does. It does. It does.
it's one of
It
those
does.
things
It does.
where
Gives it.
and we'll get into it later, but like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where this game focuses a lot on Aerith because it's about Aerith, like
Yeah.
you know, and like what happens at the end. Like it makes sense. But nah, y'all, nah. Cause also like a lot of the stuff that they're very much kind of teasing for this game, they're trying to get, they're trying to make it so that everyone is alive. Aerith is with Zach, like it's gonna happen one way or another.
I do
like
I don't remember all the exact specifics of it, but there was something where like a Square Enix employee or rep mentioned like, oh yeah, like, Tifa like makes sense as whatever, and they had to retract the statement later. Like there is no official stance on like which character is canonically romantically involved with Cloud. Like we do not have a stance on this. Like
it's so stupid though, because like
I just-
everyone
yeah, I
knows,
don't-
and
No.
everyone in a right mind knows that Cloud and Tifa
I
are to get like should be together.
I can already
I
see
just-
the comments on Spotify right now of just like I
Like-
can't believe like just like unsubbing. How dare close?
Because here's the thing. But here's the thing. Like if you think about like the way that like they tell Tifa's story in that game, it's not even like Tifa's like the girl that wants the guy and the guy's not interested or whatever. It is like there are like actual story things that make it so that like no, obviously like Tifa and Cloud should be together.
Yes.
And it's just
Yes.
like and if that's not the case, it makes those moments that are pretty iconic moments, like Cloud and Tifa at the fucking water thing when
Of
they were
course.
children.
Of course.
It makes those moments
Of course.
weaker. It makes those moments not have substance because like
I don't know if that's true. Like, I see what you're saying,
does.
but but also like life goes on. Like, you can have childhood romance and like not have that happen in your adulthood.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like, I
when
see
you're
what you're saying
telling
with
us-
linkage and like,
when you're telling a story,
I disagree.
when you're telling a story and you're like and you have a certain purpose behind that, like
Well,
I don't know.
The purpose is tension, because we're
I
having
mean-
this debate right now.
Yeah. What for me nailed this whole debate down was when I played the original, and what we'll see in the third game, you know what I'm saying, is like the whole Tifa saving Cloud thing, that we'll get to see. And we get like little kind of
Yeah.
little glimpses of that already happening, in a certain section with Tifa during the game as well. But I just don't like it's like
Well-
I respect it. Like to a certain degree, I respect y'all, Cloud and Aerith stands. Like,
It's all headcanon
shout
at
out
the
to
end of
y'all.
the day.
Like, shout out to y'all, but it's like, come on. I just think it's very clearly spelled out in the game.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe not this game, but in the original and definitely what we'll get in the third, I assume it's gonna be very clearly
Well, yeah.
like this is clearly spelled out.
I mean, in the
you know?
original, Aerith didn't exactly have a lot of time to compete in the long run.
Fair.
By the way,
Very fair.
when we started to record this, I didn't realize I was going to have to make a timestamp of like Clotey versus Clarith, but I'm down. I'm excited. I'm glad I get to put that in the description.
But also,
Yes, sir.
no, this game does back that even more, Kevin, because in the dates, I did all the female dates. There's only one date where y'all kiss,
Indeed.
and it's fucking
Yes, there is.
Tifa.
Yes, there
It's
is.
fucking Tifa.
Look,
not
Yeah.
Aerith.
holding hands is enough. What do you want? I don't.
No.
Yo, so I was DMing the mighty, the powerful Ryan Tatum. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? While I was playing this game, because they had already finished it, right? So I was stressing out because I'm like, dude, I really need this Tifa date to happen. And I'm hearing from whispers that like, oh, it's dependent on the like friend score. So at a certain point, I was like, forget literally everyone. I'm only focusing on Tifa at a certain point.
I almost
like-
hated the dog.
Bro,
So close.
so I'm over here kind of stressing about this metagame of trying to make sure I get this Tifa date. I got Tifa the first date, so that was already nailed down. But the second one, the one that really mattered, the like real one,
Yeah.
I was stressing, and I got to the point where I got up to it, and I hadn't gone like I hadn't gotten her level up to the highest tier yet. So I was like, man, okay, like this is okay. Like I lost it. Like it's probably gonna be Aerith or something like that. But like I didn't want it like this, you know. And then somehow, miraculously, just the will of my yearning, I got Tifa, and it was a really great moment, dude. I was like,
So
I was so hype. I was so excited.
so
Oh
I
man.
got that's the thing that's interesting too, is that like I've done both dates for I didn't do both. I don't think I did both for Yuffie except for the main one, but I did do both for Tifa and Aerith because I started with Aerith. I got
Mhm.
Aerith both times on my first playthrough, and I was doing outside of Queen's Blood, I was doing everything
Yeah.
like
Mm.
as I was progressing. So I don't know if I was
Did
if I
you what who did you use in your party more often? Because one of the things that contributes that I think not everyone realizes is using synergy abilities for the first
Ability
time.
abilities. Yeah. Yeah.
That gives a
oh
boost.
Yeah. That's one. It's like
um
dialogue choices too, right? It's like how you respond to certain dialogue
Yeah,
choices
it's
with
dialogue
them.
choices, it's using synergies for the first time,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it's doing side quests where they're relevant.
Right.
I
Those
Right.
are
mean
the
if
three
I
big things.
like my ideal team throughout the game was Cloud, Tifa, Yuffie.
Mm.
Once Yuffie joined the team. Yuffie's so good. Like
Oh,
after
No,
especially
Yuffie's
after
fire. No, Yuffie's
Intergrade, I was
great.
just like,
Oh yeah,
I
no,
so
would have
good.
used Yuffie if
Yuffie's
I
fire.
just didn't make it a point of always using her at 13. I love
Oh, I
five-player
see
dog.
you.
See, I'm one of those people that
That
like yeah, normally I am a huge component of like, yo, dog in my party, I'm using that dog, like,
Yeah, the
like
dog.
Koromaru or something like that. Red 13, even when I like, first played the game, like never really grabbed me like that. Just never did. Like I have nothing against Red 13,
Yeah,
but it's like, yeah, he's cool.
I
Um,
think part of it is just like when I played 7 originally, way back when, like younger me was just like, "Yo, that dog's tail is on fire." Like,
yeah, it's
like
cool,
there's just
man.
this like
It's cool.
association of like, "Oh, that's such a
I
cool
love it.
design." I love it,
It's
and
really
I,
cool.
yeah,
It's really cool.
and
How
oh
do we
man,
feel
there were
about?
adjustments I had to make with his
Yeah,
abilities.
how do we feel about that? I'm not. I'm not crazy. I don't know, guys. I'm not too crazy about the thing about Red
Do we want to
13.
dive
You
into Red
know.
13 stuff real quick?
I wanted
I
to
mean, this is
finish
spoiler.
the date thing really
Okay.
Oh,
quick,
my.
and
Oh,
then we
Sorry.
can dive into
Sorry.
Red 13.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say is that like while like we're talking about the Cloti stuff and like how like, oh, that date y'all kiss, like it's more kind of serving the idea that Cloti should be the canon, in my opinion. Um Aerith's like dates outside of the windmill, but just like the general kind of like
Yeah.
conversations and dialogues, those felt more like substantial to me. For just like character work, character development, and just like knowing like, oh, this game is like revolves around her,
Yeah.
that it felt more meaningful in that way. Like while like doing the dates with Tifa, it's just like, yo, I'm crushing on Tifa. Like I want Cloud to be with Tifa. Like I just want to see my girl. But like removing that bias and just like getting to go through Aerith stuff, I think that the Aerith content is actually better in the sense of like storytelling and like the character work and things like that.
Yeah, sure. Well, and there's something to be said, I think, for like romance that's destined to be tragedy, right? Like, I mean, I've even done that in a few games where like you have romance options, and I know some of them are kind of more like sadder toned. Where I'm like, I'm gonna do that because I want to make it kind of depressing a little bit,
Hmm.
because there's like a realness, I think, a little bit to that. Like, happily ever after is kind of boring, you know.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Well,
and
because
so, no, I'm just saying, like, my point is just that, like, with Aerith, I think some of that stuff can be more impactful, not just because of how it's written, but because there's this hanging thing in the back of your head of, like, oh, I know where this is probably going at the end of this game, or at least I think I do.
yeah, that's the thing that I think when I played it at the time was so interesting because we didn't know if Aerith was going to die.
Yeah,
Like, at that time I was just like, I hope she dies because I think she should die. And I think that there's like purpose and like storytelling and thematical purpose as to why she should die. But what if she doesn't? So it was just kind of like that's what kind of made it more interesting. Or so it's like, because I didn't think that in a hypothetical, I did not think that if Aerith didn't die, that they would have had the balls to kill someone else off.
Yeah.
You know,
I
because
agree.
like even because there's like that whole story, right, where Katase was considering killing off like Barrett, Red 13,
Yes.
and like one
Yeah.
other person when they were like parachuting back into Midgar.
Well, they
That's
actually
crazy.
teased Tifa a little bit. Like some of the trailers really led to the idea of like, is Tifa gonna die this time instead? Like, they
When like Cloud
absolutely
screams Tifa,
tried to like
yeah.
plant that idea a little bit just to give people that like doubt, you know?
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where that's another part of like this whole thing where it's just like I think that overall with this game and like the story stuff, I think that Square played it too safe. With those kind of things that we're juggling here.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that once we get to the ending of this game. Red 13. How we feeling about that voice, fellas?
Oh man. So okay,
man.
if for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't played through Remake, the Red 13 situation is that, and this is in the original game, by the way. I don't think there's much room for debate on like them doing this move, but I think there's something to say about how they did it. One of the gimmicks about Red 13 is that like you don't know what a fire dog cat's lifespan is like or what their psychology is. So when you first meet him, it's this very like, oh, he's this mysterious animal person that can talk.
Yeah.
And this is in the original game as well. When you get to his hometown, it's like, oh, this guy's like 15 mentally. Like he's a kid.
Yeah.
Like what do you
Yeah.
you know, like that's a thing in the original game as well. And so the way they sell that in Remake in Rebirth is, you know, in Remake and in the first like half of Rebirth, he has this very like, yes, I have a wizened voice and let me tell you these stories. And then there's like one moment real quick in Costa del Sol, and then the rest of the game after Cosmo Canyon where he's like suddenly Sora. Like you're just getting, you are getting like,
yeah.
Hey guys,
He's
it's
like,
me.
yeah.
I'm Red. I'm
like,
Mimaki.
Lab rat dog. And then hey
Suddenly
guys.
Sora's great.
Yeah. I do love that they joke with it a little bit, where sometimes he'll go back to that voice for specific situations. Where like, oh, I got to tell you about this pirate treasure. Hold on. In days long past.
Yeah.
No, shout out to Max Middleman, because he does a great job voicing Red 13. I had a fucking really weird experience with Max Middleman at the Game Awards. It was so awkward. I felt so weird about it. I forgot exactly who I know I told Kevin Kenson. I don't know if I told you, Kev.
Yeah, I don't think I know the story.
So I was talking to someone. I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry if you somehow listen to this podcast and I forgot who I was talking to. I want to say it was Sam from Square Enix because I just feel like, I feel like it would be someone from Square that I was talking to, and she's the main person that I know from there, but probably not. Anyway, so I was talking to someone, and as I'm talking to someone, this person from Square brings Max Middleman over to us. Like I'm right next to Max Middleman, and all of apparently everyone that's in my near general vicinity are all from Square Enix, and I had no idea. And so like she's introducing Max to everyone, and I'm like, oh shit, it's Max. And he's like, he locks eyes with me first, and I'm like, I'm not gonna just be like, oh, I'm not from Square Enix.
I'm just some guy.
Hey man, pleasure to meet you. Love you as Ryuji. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's here for Final Fantasy. I should have said Red 13. But I was just like,
I think that's
but the thing, it was kind of embarrassing for me. I was like, oh, what's up, dude?
I feel like this is
not that
overthought.
bad. That's
Like
fine.
I think you're good. I think you're
Yeah, no.
I get what you're saying, but like I feel like no one there's gonna be like, wow, repping the wrong brand right now. Like
no, but I was just like, yeah, like so that was just a really funny encounter. And speaking of which, while we're on the topic really quick, you met Brianna White. Kev.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, how was that experience?
That was great. She was very lovely. Yeah.
All I remember was like you were boring your soul to this woman.
Because I did it a few times because listen, there were some people that I had to make sure. Listen, I need you to understand the impact that you have because like it's like easy to like. I mean, I don't know. I guess I've never been on that side, but like I just hope that they just take a moment, you know, to really just let it soak in. Like, yo, like you have tangible impact on people's lives. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that was great. I also met, I I met the person that plays Yuffie, but I forgot her name. If I'm being
Susie
super
Young.
honest. Susie
Susie
Young.
Young.
I met her as well. Also lovely, very lovely. I was hoping to see my boy Cloud. I know he was around there.
He was there too. I didn't know he was there
I
this
did
year
not. I
until
did
it's too
not get to
late.
see him. Yeah, I feel like I saw Barrett's actor from afar.
Yes, he was there.
Possibly.
He was
I
there.
know he was there.
I wanted to
but
go up
I
to
think
him
I
and
saw
say hi to him again because I've met him
Well, that'd be
before.
awesome. Yeah.
But he was kind of like busy at the time, and I didn't get to see him again. So like,
Yeah.
but yeah, John Eric Bentley is like one of the like his portrayal as Barrett is like one of the most
it's great.
overlooked and
Well,
like
is
underappreciated
it under, like,
performances.
that's my favorite one. Like out of everyone.
Yeah, it's
like
great.
I think he,
No,
I
he's
think
really
he kills
good.
it the most. Like I love, like I think a lot of the voice cast is great. Him as Barrett is like perfection. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so good.
I agree. I think everyone's really really great. It's also really cool because like just because like I've followed a lot of these people and just like kind of like talking about how they got these roles. Like Susie Young, like basically that was like her first big gig was Yuffie.
So dope.
And because I believe if I remember correctly, she talked about how she like lived in North Carolina or something, and then she like wanted to do the voice acting stuff, and then she moved to LA, and then like her first big thing was Yuffie, and then she got it,
So
and now
dope.
she's just everywhere. She's killing
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's kind of
Yeah.
what happens, right? You have your big break. I mean, we saw that happen with frickin' Ben Starr. Like, came
Yeah.
out of nowhere, did Clive, and now he's everywhere in games. You know, he's the Balatro clown. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I also have a
But
very extensive concept with him as well. Yeah.
oh yeah,
That's-
Ben is great.
Yeah.
Because
Great guy.
Because at the time I was trying to grab you to get a picture with me, you, Alex, and Jonathan because we were all together finally. But you were bearing your soul to this woman, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let him do his thing.
I had to.
let the
I-
man
And then
work.
and then it was funny, like because I like pushed him, I pushed you away, and then I look back, and Brianna White's looking dead straight at me, and then like I'm already like kind of bent over, so I just like lean over, and I'm just like, "Hi, Cameron Hawkins, nice to meet you. You're amazing." And then I left. That's all I said. That's all I said. Just like I was just like that because we were busy.
Oh,
I was trying to
man.
do something, but I of course wanted to talk to her more, but I was just like, "Hi, how are you?" Just trying to introduce.
I can't
you
not
really
say
quick.
hi.
yeah.
Like I gotta
exactly.
leave, but also hi. Like
Hi, how are you? Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a fun experience, and I do want to say like everyone does great at the roles,
Yeah.
for sure. Like all of them, everyone's like perfectly casted. Everyone's like perfectly.
no, I
casted.
think everyone sounds great. Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
anyone. Yeah.
Which going back to
Is her name
where the started
Brit?
though.
What?
No, go.
Oh, I was just
Oh,
gonna
Britt
say
Baron?
113, like the
Yeah,
the
Britt Baron. Is that her name?
Yeah,
Britt
Britt
Baron?
Baron's Tifa's voice actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's remarkable as Tifa. Like that, she's really good, bro.
See, I think we're gonna get the most out of Tifa in this next game. Like,
yeah, for
this
sure.
is where we're gonna really see, because like I'm not saying that she's kind of just been there for the first two games, but like she hasn't had a whole lot of like big moments. One of which was one of the coolest moments in the game was the live stream stuff.
Yes,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, of course.
Like that was really cool.
That's- Oh god, that's a whole other tangent I want to go on for a little bit.
Yeah.
She.
I mean,
she.
we're kind of sorry. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
She gets a bitch. She gets a bitch laugh homegirl in the third.
Oh
game.
yeah, I'm very excited. For that.
It's gonna be lit.
But we're
Can't
kind of
wait.
in a transitional period right now with the podcasts, Kevin. So if you want to talk about the live stream stuff, we can talk about it.
So it's not necessarily live stream stuff specifically, but one of the things I really did love about what Rebirth did, and Remake did this as well to an extent, but I think Rebirth nailed it even better. And like we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast in general, where like I'm really big into the concept of the party. Like I think cast and having everyone be interesting and fully fleshed out personalities is very important to me. And I absolutely adore how much Rebirth makes sure that like everyone has their time in the sun. Like every character has a moment where they're the center focus, where they have character growth moments. And some of this stuff already existed, but there's other stuff they absolutely added in to do that, including like reflecting a little more on Yuffie's backstory and the introduction of Sonon as a character. You have a little more time with Cait Sith, even though he's definitely like the lowest tier of the characters as far as like time to give attention to. He joins late. He doesn't really have like the friendship meter thing. for reasons that happened near the end of the game. But they really made sure that like every character has a moment, and even in like the big finale moments, the way they incorporate the entire party into the combats, into the cutscenes. Cloud is the main character. Aerith and Tifa are very strong supporting leads. But ultimately, everyone feels like they have a moment to shine and like a reason to be there and be important. And I love that. Like that's such an important thing to me, and I think they've really nailed that compared to the original with this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think that yeah, I mean I don't really have much more to say about that. I agree. I think that there's and the thing that like I was kind of worried about is not worried about, but I yeah, I would say more worried about. I was kind of worried that I would be comfortable already with like the characters that we played as in the first game, that like I really wouldn't want to rock as Red 13, or I wouldn't have fun time playing as Red 13 when I had to play as him, or Kate Sith when I had to play as him. But Kate Sith was actually really fun. I liked how they like kind of developed that kit
Yeah.
in this kind of like RNG base or type
Well,
style.
that and having the Mog be like a tank that you could either ride or fight separately from, like super cool idea.
Yes, very very cool. But I'm also like super excited to play as Vincent like in the next game. That's gonna be
I love how
Yes,
Vincent's
bro.
incorporation is. I'm just going to be
Yeah.
mysterious and loom in the background every scene.
Literally.
Like he's just
No,
like, I'm
I-
here now. I'm over here looking at things. I'm with the party, but I'm not fighting with them. I'm gonna be over here doing Matt Mercer voice. Hold on.
Dude. Vincent is like a top 5 like coolest character like ever. I love
design
bro.
is crazy.
Design wise is insanity.
He's like the right amount of edge. Like there's that part of you that almost wants to make fun of the edge, but like you can't because it's done so well. Like
no,
Yeah.
it's up there.
he's just aura farming like the whole game, and I love it, bro. It's an insane aura farm, bro.
Wait, okay. On the subject of characters and depictions, and how do we feel about? So has everyone's played the original 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like. Now, to be fair, I don't know how much of this is translation because I know that is a bit of an argument about the original 7 is that there were some liberties with how translation was done. Sid felt a little like kind of toned down, right?
Very much toned down.
Yeah, he was toned down.
Like he's just
sure.
not
Very,
like,
very
and I
much
don't know
toned
how
down,
like I don't know if maybe that's more authentic to the original Japanese script or not. But like in FF7 US translation, like he's cursing all the time. He's kind of a jerk. He's not like a great person.
He's a bit abusive too.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
And now he's like, "Hey guys, I'm the charismatic pilot of your ship, and oh, I knew Aerith's mother. Like, oh, I take a shine to people." And it's just like, "All right, what's up, man?"
He's like Matthew McConaughey, like kind of coded, and it's like I did not take that. You know, I did not like think that was how you were portrayed in the original game. You know, definitely.
Yeah,
not.
I mean, like I think
not
that
like
they
the
can.
like rough, charming kind of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with like reworking his character to be a little less problematic, and
For sure.
And I'm curious as to because he does kind of feel a bit of a how do I explain it? Just like a wet blanket of sorts, where he's like we don't got a whole lot of personality from him yet.
Yeah. He does
and
have
so
one kind of jerk line at the very end of the game, but
yeah, and so I'm curious as to it seems like he's definitely like kind of like, oh, I'm a man of principles. I have like specific like things that I'm
I got my own
cool with
code
doing.
kind of thing.
My own code. And I'm curious as to like, hey, did you develop that code because of what happened at Rocket Town?
That's fair.
Yeah,
like
we didn't
there
have
are ways to
yeah,
there are ways to rework his character in a way that like makes sense and feels appropriately updated, while also making keeping the kind of same backstory, I guess, that he has. So I'm not particularly I didn't really like take any issue with Sid, because like even like just like from the simplicities of like, oh, we're not making him smoke anymore. He doesn't smoke anymore.
right.
Yeah.
Even in even in Kingdom Hearts, like when you meet Sid, like he instead of smoking, he has like just like a toothpick in his mouth all the
Yeah,
time.
like a pick. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's just like, you could do something like that. But it'll be interesting to see how the new characters shape out when it comes to that. Is there anything that we want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet
Um,
before we hop into story stuff?
I have two semi-small topics. Small
Okay.
topics.
Okay.
Hit me.
Thoughts on Gongaga traversal, because I thought that was literally the
Whoa.
worst thing in the game.
Thank
I
you
thought that
for
was
reminding
literally
me.
I thought that was
went
literally the worst thing in the game. Like I'm not even
I didn't love it. I was able to like cope with it enough that I got through it and it was fine. But like of the zones
Yeah,
to traverse, that was the worst one.
that was an extreme like, oh my god, like this is really raining on the experience for sure.
And it sucks too, because that's where a lot of
Yeah.
the new stuff is.
And
that's
like
where a lot of the new stuff is.
Look, like I love Crisis Core, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you two love Crisis Core as well. Like I never pictured Gongaga like how they did in Rebirth. To me, it never felt like that.
Like a
I don't
jungle
know,
region
man.
kind of thing.
Like I think if I remember like how I think about Crisis Core, which I played the remaster as well, basically a remake to be honest. And like I just remember it being like, yes, a jungle, but not like a overgrown like mess.
Yeah.
There were clearly like pathways and
I mean,
like beaten paths that were I think were granted it wasn't a lot of Gongaga that we saw in that game, to be fair. Like I can understand that, but I don't know, man. I
It's
just was
tough
not
because
feeling
of
it.
like what's represented by actual in-depth map
Right.
versus world map. Because like, yeah, Gongaga, how the town's depicted in original FF7, and even also I think in like Crisis Core, yeah, it's like not that dense jungle looking within the town itself. It's just kind of another town. But
Yes.
in all fairness, in FF7, when you go to Gongaga on the world map, it is surrounded by a whole mess of trees. I mean, it's the old school PS1 world map render stuff, so it's just a sea of green shrubbery.
Okay. Right.
And what does that
Yeah.
actually mean, right?
It's fair. It's fair.
It's weird. I agree it's weird.
Yeah.
It felt like something I didn't fully expect. I think part of it was to make sure the zones felt more distinct across the board.
Yeah.
Um,
And like we're talking about like a jungle, that has a lot of different like dynamic things going on versus like what I'll say like calm felt like calm.
yes.
Calm felt like calm. But granted, that's a city layout. So it's like, okay,
It's also
something
such
that's
an
a little bit
iconic thing. Like
number one iconic, and then number two just like easily defined. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like Gongaga, yeah. So that's a fair, but that's not even that fair of a point to necessarily make. But
I agree in the sense of like when we got to Gongaga, I didn't know. I was like, oh, this is Gongaga. Like this
yeah,
is
it just doesn't feel
it definitely felt
recognizable.
weird.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's got to be a certain level of leniency in the sense of like they are basically redesigning how this world is shaped, right? Like because when you played the original, it's just giant overworld map, and it's just a bunch of trees and it's a bunch of like mountains, and there's not a huge major sense of like direction, like in the sense of like just traveling around the overworld. You kind of just have to like it's kind of like one of those it feels like kind of one of those last JRPGs where you kind of just have to figure out where you need to go.
yeah.
Um
Maybe that's why it
and
didn't
so
bother me as much because I just have a little bit of that. Like I have the immune system built up for it.
yeah, and so I just kind of was just like, it is what it is. They have to rework those things to make the whole game work. Like, and even though again that area has most of the new stuff and uh but has like the terrible like mushroom jumping stuff, I do like the different chocobos and
Yes.
how the different chocobos in each region did different stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also
Yes.
handle a little differently for the chocobo racing. Yeah.
Yes, that is true.
Yes,
That is
yeah.
true. That is
I'm
true.
a little sad there's no red chocobo. I know there really wasn't in the original either, but I like red.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
Little something.
That was cool, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, the Gongaga like mushroom stuff was not great. Definitely
Yeah.
one of the low points of the game, from a gameplay standpoint.
Yeah, we
I
get
think I have
that
one.
for sure.
Yeah, what was the other thing you wanted to talk about, Kev?
Yeah, one more small thing. The one time where this game made me really have a really hard hysterical breakdown.
Okay.
Where like I was really like I had to pause, like I had to collect myself, like I was really like real grown man like crying for real.
Okay.
Is,
Okay.
is this story or a mechanic that bothered you? Like, was this gamer rage or was this like a plot moment?
It was a plot moment. It was a plot moment. So
Okay. Okay.
it's when we get to um Gold Saucer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see Loveless.
Mm.
I think it was the first time you go to the theater, right?
Mm.
And you're walking in this hallway, and you're
Oh,
and
I
you're
know what you're
Yep.
talking about.
and,
Oh, I know.
and the game guides you to this beautiful portrait, right? And it's Jesse, and that shit took me out. Like, oh, like I did like, and it was a very surreal thing that I don't think I've ever experienced in the game up to this point of my life. To be completely honest with you, where like it was a genuine, like, oh, like yes, like a yearning, like a you are missed
Yeah.
in this experience right now. Like your presence is missed in this party, and
It's
it's felt like palpable to like the characters that's in that scene. Mainly, it's Cloud and Tifa. But also I feel like the player, like at least me, like I really had a true sense of like I miss this person. You know
yeah.
what I'm saying?
No, if
It
there's
was yeah, yeah,
if
it's
there's
great.
one thing I really want to praise about how Remake approaches its plot versus the original, it's making me actually care about Avalanche. Like
Absolutely.
like
Yep.
that like they're such minor supporting characters in the original game you don't have a lot of time with. Yes, they hang out at the very beginning, but like there's not much with them. Remake fleshed them out so much more, especially her.
Yeah.
And then yeah, they give you that gut punch a couple times in Rebirth. You know that
Yeah.
I think that that's the hardest one is Loveless, and then oh god, seeing the play and it's like a recording.
Yeah.
Fuck.
It's really sad. Oh man, it's sad. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's beautiful. It's
twisting the knife.
really expertly done, but like god damn, that portrait like is etched into my mind, bro. Like crazy, crazy.
Twisting the knife.
And I I think that was the only time I really got I mean, Aerith's speech towards the end, and then when Cloud's like, "Are you done?" Like,
Bro,
dude,
we're
the
gonna get to
biggest,
that.
like,
We're gonna get to that.
fuck
But when he
you.
said,
Like,
"Are you done?"
yeah,
You
it's
know, like when
crazy.
you know when you like
Crazy
feel
shit.
you feel as if
That's crazy.
like when you get that kind of sensation in your face, as if air is passing by you and you're kind of being blown back. That happened to me
Out of
when he
pocket.
said that. I was just like,
Flag on the play, bro.
"Oh shit!" But we'll get to that
Yeah.
in a second because like while that was really cool, also have a big problem with like that part of the game before we're even getting into the city.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
But
Um,
yeah,
but
I think those are my only two big things I wanted to mention. I think the rest, can just come as it
yeah.
comes.
I have a very
So
minor thing, and this isn't that
okay.
important, but I just think it's really cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love how much the Odin summon fight is like a skill check, like a literal skill check.
Mm.
Like, do you guys remember this?
I'm trying to vaguely. Is
So,
it in
Are,
like the like
you
combat
mean like when
simulator?
you have to stagger him before he kills you?
well, you don't have to. Well, staggering helps, but literally the mechanic is you have to play well. Like, you can't just like dominate him damage wise. You have to dodge attacks. You have to apply pressure. You have to be like engaging all the game
Yeah.
systems properly. And
Mhm,
if you don't,
mhm.
he just busts out an insta kill move and kills you because
Oh yeah, because he's
Oh,
bored. He's
Yeah.
bored, and he's just
yeah, I
like,
see.
"I'm done with you."
Such an amazing conceptual idea of being like, this guy just wants a challenge, and if you're not going to play well, it's just done. Get out.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
that was a very frustrating fight for some people. Thankfully, it's optional. But I thought that was the neatest. Like, I love when mechanics like signal like a little bit of role playing and storytelling to them. That was such a fun idea.
So funny enough, believe it or not, when you do the Gilgamesh stuff, like you go to his like fortress or whatever, you have to fight him and another summon at the same time.
I already see where this is going.
And
Great.
yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, I imagine it is not.
But yeah, story
Ooh,
stuff.
Small tiny thing too.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a shame that there's no transmog in Rebirth.
Yeah.
Because it's like I just wish that like guys like
Yeah.
shout out to all the swords. Shout out. Like they look great. They look they're not the Buster sword. That's the problem. That's the problem.
There's some
That's-
thematic
that's-
loss
that's the
sometimes where
problem.
it's like you don't see it on him, right?
Yeah.
Especially like in the
It's
final
like,
fight. Like it feels right to have
Yeah.
it. And
It needs
you
to be
don't.
the like that's all I want to. That's shout out to all the other swords. Shout out, they're great. They look
The
cool.
last sword that Cloud gets is sick as shit.
I love
The
that
green
sword. I do love that sword.
It's
Fire.
sick as
I think
shit.
Buster Sword is more important thematically, but design wise,
Oh, for sure, of course, 100%.
100%.
I just
Yeah,
want the Buster sword. That's it. Yeah, that's me.
No, it's one of those things where like that's actually one of the things that I really liked about Kingdom Hearts 3, where they like let you upgrade the weapon. So I'm like, cool, I can use the fucking Keyblade, like the normal Kingdom Key for like, you know, a lot of this game. Because like it just the association. But anyway, story. I want to start this off talking about Zack. Because I think the biggest like slap in my face that I got from playing this game is the lack of amount of time that you play as Zack.
It's
Like the character's on the box art.
He's on the box. He's on the key art.
And you play as him for maybe 2 hours.
And look, intentional or not, we got a remaster of the game starring him right before when it feels like he's being built up more to be like extra relevant. Not to say that he's not relevant, he is, but like I get where you're going here with like you have that very beginning, and then you have occasional little plot beats strewn throughout all the chapters where it's like see his POV for 5 minutes and then
it's such a tease.
On.
It's such a tease. Yeah, it's very small, little interstitials that eventually build up to something that makes somewhat sense, but it's like, damn.
It's starts off when you start off playing as Zack in the very beginning of the game. I'm like, oh we're doing it. What a way to start the game!
Awesome open. Yeah.
Yes,
on 10. Absolutely.
And out of nowhere, like that was such a cool.
100%.
Like I did not see that coming as the opening, and I loved it. Like, amazing.
Exactly. And then it's just, you'll play as him much more after that.
Like so much of the plot development that happens with him in like the little like sparsed out moments. Like some of it is kind of neat, foreshadowing, hinting, little things, but then it's also just like, what was the point of a lot of this? Like, there's a lot at the beginning, a lot at the end, and then there's just kind of like, oh man, like Marlene said some cryptic shit that one time. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
And then like, here's the thing. Like, I bet there's a version of Rebirth, right, that is just critical path, where like that stuff probably strings along a little bit better, maybe, but. You know, can I really fault the game for that? I don't know. You know, like that's like the big thing of like, we're not necessarily complaining for like the value proposition that this game offers of like having this much insane amount to do in the game. But I think there is an argument about the way it strings a story and how like it ends up having a lot of time before the next big, you know, main plot point in the main story. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Speaking of Zack segments and big or bigs, how did we feel about how that was handled? Because I was kind of like, really? Like this is what, like that's what that was all for? Like I almost feel like they left a door open at the end of Remake, and then they were like, I don't know what to do with this, and then they just
just here's an element that y'all can work with.
It was felt so underutilized and weird. Like I kind of get what they were going for, but like.
Can you give me some context as a refresher? Because honestly, I'm kind of
not. So outside of Zack talking to like hanging out with Aerith's mom, the other like plot point with him is that he runs into Biggs, and it's implied that it's the Biggs from like Remake's timeline. Like he's like, oh, I was, you know, the plate's about to fall, and I was like dying, and then suddenly I was here, and like things are different, and it's kind of weird. So it's implied to be him, and like he survived from Remake somehow in this new multiverse afterlife. Who knows? That's a whole other debate we have to talk about in a bit. But they do that, And so he interacts with Zach a couple times, and they have some conversations, and like they do a little bit of exposition by having them talk and things, and like Zach being like, "No, like you have purpose to your life, even though you're like the lone survivor of your crew." Blah blah blah. And then like near the very end of the game, when they like have a small bro down, he's just shot by some dude off screen and instantly dies. And like it's just like
Wait,
that's
that's
like
what happened?
yeah. They just kill Biggs off at like the last second, like unceremoniously, and it's just like, there we go. That was his plot
Is that
arc.
real? The fuck?
We brought him back to
Damn, that really
life to just kill him off in the last 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do not remember that. I do not remember that point.
It's so bizarre. It's so
Yeah,
weird. Like it felt like, and I
damn.
get it. It's like part of it is to give Zach some kind of grounding and another character to relate with, and then give him an extra tragedy at the last second, I guess. But it just felt with the door that was opened of being like, is Biggs alive at the end of Remake?
Yeah.
It felt like
Yeah.
such an underutilization, and just like that's what that was for. Like that's all we're gonna do
No.
with that.
No, and that plays in the camp's point, honestly, of like how there was a lot of things that were kind of set up and angled and positioned at the end of Remake, where Rebirth like doesn't really pick up the baton in like a meaningful way or just at all.
Yeah,
in some
and like not
cases.
in the way
Yeah.
that you would expect, and not like in a fun surprise way, but in like a, oh wait, is that what that setup was for? Like I get, okay,
Yeah.
like I guess this is
Yeah.
what we're doing now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Cam, where do you want to go with this? Or are we
Yeah,
gonna get
okay.
into the messy stuff now? Are we gonna? Is there another?
Do we just wanna dive
Hey, man,
into
go
the ending of this game, or once you get to the Temple of the Ancients and all that stuff?
And well, and
I'm
like
good,
maybe
man.
implications
Do
of
it.
how those tie. Like, is there another? Like, I'm trying to think if there's any other. Like, I feel like we've been pretty good about a lot of different things.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about a lot of the main stuff. I mean, I do think that they, we don't have to go too deep in it, but I think they handled Barrett's stuff at Corel like really, really well.
Oh,
Yes.
exceptionally
Like
well.
super
Oh
good.
my
No,
god.
again, I
Yeah.
think Barrett's voice actor. I think everyone did phenomenal, but he to me is like the pinnacle out of the cast. Like, I really think
For
he
sure.
nailed him so well, and that scene in particular, like that fight, the banter during it, um, phenomenal. Like, just
Yeah.
hands down, one of my favorite parts of the game.
Yeah, I think that whole section is really, really great. Learning more about Barrett's backstory and how he kind of served as like a leader of that town, and how everything just kind of went to crap, and how like why he hates Shinra, and like it's all really, really great. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we can just dive into the Temple of the Ancient stuff. Like, I feel like that most of the other stuff like didn't really there wasn't a whole lot of like super heavy stuff that wasn't outside of like the moment, like that moment for Barrett, and like the Cosmo Canyon stuff for Red. But we actually didn't talk about the the village that you go to while you're in Cosmo Canyon. That's not from the original either. I forgot
Oh
the
yeah,
name
that's
of
Oh,
the
the G. Or
the G. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Sick design.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for
Love the design of what like a living G looked like, and the building up a little more of like lore behind the black materia, because like in the original it's sort of like black materia bad, white materia good, and part of it is that they're themed after classic spells that were very strong in older games, Holy and Meteor. Like Meteor is the ultimate spell in a lot of older Final Fantasy, so like that's the flavor of like, oh, Meteor is a very dangerous, super powerful thing.
right.
But giving it this whole thing where they're like, oh no, like we channeled all of our malice and hate and like wanting to rebel against these other cultures and such, like infusing that into a mana and making Meteor, like that was such a cool concept. I love that a lot.
Yeah,
Indeed.
that
Indeed.
was really cool. The enemies there were really annoying though. They those were really annoying enemies. Speaking of which, one thing we didn't talk about, which this game does in spades, banger boss fights. Banger boss fights, like and so I just wanted to shout that out. I don't know if there were any that particularly stood out to y'all, but I just thought in general, like, I don't think that there was a single boss fight that I played it like in this game that I like was like, that was a bad boss fight. I didn't enjoy myself. Like, there was a fun strategy to those fights. But yeah, story. Temple of the Ancients. My when we get to the Temple of the Ancients, it is like very clear that something is wrong with Cloud,
Oh yeah.
and the party just seems to not care. They don't do anything. Like they don't call him out, like, or just be like, "Hey, bro, you good?"
I
It's
wouldn't say they don't care, but they certainly enable. It's kind of like, I don't know if this guy's
they
all
just-
right, but I'm gonna let him do his thing. It's like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's the
yeah.
problem.
certainly
That's the problem.
Yeah.
yeah, they're like, you good,
I just-
buddy? All right, sure. You
I
seem
mean,
fine.
That felt mad. Sorry, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it progressively like gets worse as time goes on, and then when you get to that moment, that's when it's really like, okay, guys, like you're especially Barrett, like
Yeah.
right, like especially Barrett being like, bro, you need to calm the fuck down.
Yeah, he should more than anyone be the guy who's like trying to put him back in his place, and he doesn't
Yeah.
really in the later part.
Yeah.
I agree.
He like kind of does it, which I thought that big moment, like it seems like you had it at that moment. Mine was when Cloud pushes Tifa into the water,
Yeah,
leading up to the live stream. I'm like, bro, how is
she,
this
like,
being?
forgives him like immediately.
Yeah, I'm like, what are we
alright.
doing? Like, what? Like, she could have died. Like, what are we doing?
Kind of
And,
like
like,
a minute.
Yeah, I think that was when Barrett like hits him. I think and it's like, yo, like
What do you
straighten
think?
out, whatever, or something like that. Like
Mhm.
yeah, I know he like snaps him out of it in like a very like physical way. But that was the point where I'm like, yo, okay, like we're just gonna keep it going. Like this is just gonna be a thing that is just gonna keep happening, and like there's not gonna be like any in world like kind of tempering of Cloud,
It's
you know,
weird. Yeah.
being controlled. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's them wanting to emphasize that plot point more strongly than it was
For
in the
sure.
original, with,
For sure.
him being, quote, a puppet. But then they adhere to the general flow of the story from before, so they can't have anyone stop him that hard.
Right.
It's very bizarre,
Yeah.
yeah, because there's this thing
You're
where
right.
like the puppetry feels so much stronger in this one. Because before it would just be kind of like, oh, Cloud's freaking out for a moment and then he gets under control.
It
This
was
is
just like,
Cloud's
like
freaking out
brain
and
thing,
committing
whatever.
abuse
Yeah.
against his own party members, and everyone's just gonna
Yeah.
kind of gloss over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
the whole
yeah,
you're
'cause,
not
like,
really Tifa, and Tifa's like, well, okay, that was weird, but like I support you. You're my friend.
and like
He was ready to stab you.
the only one that gets kind of a pass from that dynamic, I think, is Tifa, because I get that she says it, I think, briefly. I think even directly to Cloud when it's just her, Cloud, and Yuffie. I think they're at some reactor, I think, or whatever.
Yeah, no, she teases them a
and,
little
like,
about like if you act weird again, like thinking I'm not me, that thing.
Yeah, yeah. And like I think Tifa basically states that like, hey, like I'm just trying to just watch over you. Which that's what she kind of does in OG too,
Yeah.
where like she very much just keeps a very cautionary eye on Cloud and just
All of them,
observes to try to see what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So really the only pass I get, I mean, the only pass I really give is Tifa. Everyone else, I'm like, yo, why is no
All
one
this
doing
fan out.
anything? Like, yeah, like, yo, like, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was a bizarre thing for them to just kind of like let things roll, considering especially with Barrett, like how like he stops him for even potentially thinking differently than him, let alone like what he's doing there. And so that was interesting, and kind of like funny enough, like talking about how Vincent like is just kind of there for the rest of the game. Like, remember when he's just like sitting across the city? He's like the city of the ancients. He's just chilling there.
Yeah.
He's just like chilling, watching
He's
everything
so
happen.
dope.
Directly intercedes once, which is like to help hold the door open for Cloud to go through, and every other time he's just like, I'm gonna be off in the distance, watching what's
Just
happening. And
Just aura farming, bro. Aura
I
farming.
can't join the
at
party
Okay.
yet because they didn't want to develop
the
my
max.
moveset. So
Kevin, what
Yes.
do you Kenson, what do you want to discuss specifically regarding this ending?
everything. I don't know. Like,
Open. You have just beaten the game, so I think it's just most
better for
most
me, though.
interesting
So-
if
so
you
here's-
were the one that
yeah.
brings up stuff.
Okay. Here's a thing that because I beat the game literally like a little over 24 hours ago. I'm still even kind of still digesting it a little bit. There's I feel like a couple different ways to read what's going on in the last segments. Some feel more like what they want you to take away than others, but I also think that could be a red herring. Because we just don't know, ultimately, right? Like, it's just like, it's intentionally kind of vague until 3 kind of gives some answers, maybe. I think one thing I want to talk about is how much of this story is actually happening and leaning into this like multiverse theory, and how much of it is Cloud just losing his goddamn mind. Because I think there's arguments for either interpretation of different scenes, and I think both could be true to an extent. But there's some interesting choices here. You know, I think the big one, right, is the Aerith moment of
Yes.
Original game, Aerith dies, gets stabbed through, call it a day. Like there's no debate. Despite how many different guides claimed there were ways to either prevent it or bring her back to life in chapter 4 or whatever. That's how it was in the original. And the way they do it in Rebirth is they love doing this static thing where it's like, oh, we're gonna quickly cut to like, static everywhere, and this happens or this happens, and different versions of events play out. And Cloud simultaneously stops Sephiroth and actually saves Aerith, and even like sees her and talks to her some more throughout the rest of the game. But we also see her get stabbed through, and that's everyone else's understanding of the situation. That no, she died like that. This is playing out like it did in the original. And I'm curious for your guys' takes on this, because I think there's some people who are reading this as some kind of weird like multiverse bleeding thing where simultaneous worlds are happening and existing at the same time, where like Cloud is somehow in a weird between barriers and like sees a living version of Aerith that the other party doesn't. And then there's a reading of like Cloud's broken as fuck mind, thinks that he was able to save her and can't let go of the fact that she's actually dead. Because that's like a huge thing in the original game, right? Is that Cloud makes stuff up in his head all the time. His entire personality is fake. That's like the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's an awkward dude who thinks he's a badass and convinced himself he was. And like, is this like a further development of that? Or are we trying to introduce some kind of extra complex colliding of worlds and timelines situation?
I think the base level of what you're wondering is the timeline stuff.
Yeah.
I do think that there's like some interesting things with Cloud and his personality stuff. And there are some things that you brought up earlier that you weren't correct on that I didn't want to bring up because I didn't want to go on a huge tangent.
Okay.
So we'll get to that in a second. But with the with Cloud specifically, like there is some interesting stuff with that where it's like we don't really know. Like, we see like Aerith at the very end of the game. Aerith is talking to Cloud. Aerith is dead. Is that Cloud making up Aerith, like, figment of his imagination?
Right.
Or is that her using the live stream to talk to him?
Yeah.
And but it's also like, if that's the case, why is it only Cloud? Why is it only Cloud that she's talking to and not everyone else? So there's a lot of like, we don't really know when it comes to that stuff. But I do think that the aspects of, because that's another interesting thing too, is like when correct me if I'm wrong, it's after these events where like Cloud is like in the wheelchair and like is being taken care of by Tifa and stuff like that. Is that after this part of the game in the original?
No. So in the original,
Okay, that's later.
there's
no?
a little bit more plot that happens after this, and then in the original, what happens is they find the real Sephiroth, who's like inside of
Yes, they
a
find the
big
real
old
Sephiroth,
materia.
and then that stuff happens.
That's
Yes,
when
they
he
do.
gives him the black materia, and then Cloud passes
Mhm.
out, and then he has the whole like I'm in a wheelchair, and eventually like he kind of has that revelation moment of who he actually is, and like
Yeah.
gets his shit together, and then it's like true Cloud for the rest of the story.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
yeah, who knows if that's how they're going to handle it with this one, but that's how it was in 7.
There's
Yeah,
like not
there's-
enough time. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah, there's
not enough
definitely
game.
stuff that like has
Not
to
enough
happen
game.
before
Yeah.
we get to the real Sephiroth
Yeah.
stuff. And who know, considering that Sephiroth, like a form of Sephiroth already exists like since the beginning, who knows if that is actually going to be the same execution as the original game.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the timeline stuff, so it's definitely a vergence of timelines because I'm sure you remember because you finished it last night. You saw Zack kind of doing a bunch of different scenarios.
Yeah.
You saw Zack try to go to Shinra, where he's trying to get the cure for Cloud. You see him try and stop Biggs with the bombing run. Those are all different realities.
Well, no, that's implied to be in the same one. Because the point he's able to reach Biggs because Biggs' plan fails. So Biggs is like, "Oh, you just like, oh, like your plan didn't work out. I went and did this, and now I'm here."
But there's like 3 different like
Stamps, right?
they show there's different stamps.
Yeah.
There's different stamps, so you know that they're different realities and they're like different choices. That's why like we see him a few times like stop between the two, like the left path or the right path. One was like, let's go to Shinra. The other was like, let's stop Biggs. And then there's also the one of like just protecting Aerith from back at home. So this isn't the same. This is not the same reality as the party that we, Cloud and crew.
Yeah.
This is a different reality.
Yes.
And so those were just showing like, oh, there are all these different timelines where like Zack is still alive but makes different choices. And they're using like that instance to signify that, and as well as the stamps to signify like, oh, these are all these different realities, and that's that.
Yeah.
And so like but the thing that's interesting, like that's I just like want to know like at this point, like what is the point? Like what is the purpose
Sure.
behind all of it? Because I do think, again, I don't know how, but I do think this game is going to end up in some way of being like best case scenario, happily ever after, everyone's alive, everyone gets their perfect ending. Because that's kind of what Square has been doing with some of their other games like Kingdom Hearts 3. And on top of that, like they're changing things to the story for a reason.
Yeah.
What would be the end game of that reason? And to me, it's like everyone has a happily ever after. Even if and that's not what I want. I don't want that.
No, I agree.
But that's what I think is going to happen.
I agree with that's a reading of like why they're doing what they're doing. I don't think that's the only possibility. I think there's room for an interpretation where these extra plot elements are added, not just for the sake of like making things extra convoluted or making Remake more distinctly different from the original, but for either updating and changing some themes or driving themes home in a different way.
Do they need to do that?
Oh, but that's not the question though. Like whether or not they need to do that, that's what they're doing. Like things are different, and I don't think they necessarily.
But what I'm saying
have
is
to...
like when they decided to do this remake, there had to be meaningful purpose behind that.
Yeah,
behind doing that, and like what you're saying with those examples to me does not justify making 3 games to retell the story in that way.
Well, I mean,
that's my thing.
Part of the point of remaking the game in 3 parts is we're bringing back one of our largest stories and IPs, and hoping that they sell bonkers, which hasn't entirely been happening. But I understand where you're coming from on this. I don't. I've had that same thought, and I'm not fully convinced that's what's going to happen. I think there's a bit of a tease with that. I think there's they certainly want to give you that impression. but I'm not sure if that's where this is ultimately going to lead.
I hope you're right. Just to be
Yeah.
clear, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, like, I don't know what we're supposed to take away from the multiple reality stuff, which is
Yeah.
definitely, whether you like it or not, like definitely an aspect of this new Final Fantasy VII.
Sure.
Like it's definitely somehow imperative
Yeah.
to the overall story, right?
I mean, you have
But
Sephiroth like basically look at the camera and say, different major choices have led to numerous timelines of things being different.
yeah,
Like that,
yeah,
they make it very overt.
yeah. So like, but when it directly pertains to like Aerith's death scene, right, or lack thereof in some kind of shape, form, fashion, right? I think what I think most speaks to me, and what I think is possibly what it more so is from that specific standpoint, is to depict like how gone Cloud is. I think that speaks more so to what is happening in that specific, scene.
Mhm.
But we can't remove the context of the very clear thing that they are presenting, which is this multiversal,
Yeah.
like different reality time. I think so. I don't know exactly how it's going to tie in, but I think, as of right now, like I think it, to me, like speaking more to just how absolutely gone Cloud is, right? And then like I'm imagining in the third game, like we're gonna get a very, very dramatic Cloud realization of like, yo, she's really gone.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't save her. You know what I'm saying? And then we get his whole meltdown, and then we get his rise up, and then we go into the, go back to Midgar, all that fun stuff, whatever, go to the crater,
Yeah.
etc. But I say that now in 2025, but there is still the very real context of the reality stuff. So I'm not even too sure on that. But that just to me, like, that has been stewing over the past year, and like that feels the more correct thing, at least for me, in terms of feelings, right? But truth be told, like, you just beat it last night, Kev. Like, I didn't know how to feel about the ending for a while, bro. For a
Yeah.
while. Like
Oh yeah.
I was like, man, I don't know.
No, I'm
Like it
more
was
confused
such a
now, trust me.
different yeah, like it's such a different takeaway from like remake, where like remake, like I was like, oh my god, like I need to consume everything about this IP, Maybe it's a little different because I already consumed everything of this IP already. Like, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just on the new territory right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know how to like. I wouldn't even like call Rebirth's version of Aerith's death like more iconic than the original by any means at this current point. But then maybe we'll have a thing where this third game could put Rebirth into so much context and make it fire.
Yes. No, like
Maybe we just don't
this
know the full things yet,
this is
but
Yeah,
one of
we'll
those
see.
exactly.
We'll see. We'll
where
see.
part two
Yeah.
will be defined by part three. Like absolutely.
Yeah.
Like how
Yeah.
how well three sticks the landing and delivers on the stuff being set up here. Because also going off what you were saying with like, how you felt about remake and going into rebirth, as someone who played seven originally first and played remake and then went into rebirth, like
Mhm.
while I
Yeah.
didn't know where things were going to fully go with remake, I felt like at the end of remake, I had an idea of what some of the themes and concept and direction was going to be, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
we've literally killed fate. We've killed like the concept of canon and needing to obey the laws of what
Yeah.
happened the first time around, and this is going to be its own story. Maybe there's a little bit of a time recurrence thing going on because you literally get a quick snippet of like the closing cutscene of the original game in remake where like Red 13 remembers it somehow. Wild stuff. Uh, and then Rebirth, I'm more confused now. Where I'm just like, okay, so that
100%.
wasn't maybe what we're doing. And maybe there's another thing going on, or maybe because of time recurrence, now there's multiple timelines and multiverses as a result of all the different choices. And now, what?
Yeah.
And maybe this is,
Yeah.
again, I'm digesting it still. This is more fresh for me.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I feel more
It's
confused
just
at the end of this one than I did at remake.
yeah, and like I definitely feel you on that because like with Rebirth, I'm like, I guess I mean like I know what happens after this point from the original game.
Yeah.
I know we still gotta hit my favorite part of the original game, Rocket Town. Can't wait for that. I just really want to see that just depiction of that just tilted rocket. Oh, dude, it's gonna be fire. But like that, we gotta go back to Midgard. We gotta deal with the the not the giants, but what are they called?
The weapons?
The weapons. The weapons. Thank you. Thank you. We gotta deal with the weapons. We gotta deal with Hojo, the crater, like all. So we have a lot more to go. So like, I know what happens, but yeah, but like with where Rebirth ends off, like I don't know where the tethers are yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I bet like someone that's only played Remake and Rebirth, like yeah, we get the weapons introduced in this game, getting teed up. So there is that thread, but like from a definitive like, is Aerith dead? Is she not? And now we're gonna go snowboarding for the intro of 3. It's gonna be crazy. We'll see, but yeah, we'll see. But I just think that my takeaways are like there's not like a lot of like really like potent tethers that are pulling me into like speculating about the third game. Even though I know what's gonna happen, I just they just kind of leave things in an odd place.
Yeah. There's enough weird things and vague things where like you can speculate. I'm not saying you can't, but like none of it feels the most grounded because it's like it feels like anything could happen at this point.
Yep.
In some ways.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's a few things I want to talk about regarding what y'all are saying. The first thing I want to say is that I think that what is weird about this game is like how this game ends is that it's the first game ends, it's just like kind of gives you this idea of like anything can happen now, and that was like a big theme of like that game, and then Rebirth doesn't really mess with that at all in a significant way at the like outside of Aerith's death at the end of it. And we just like and then there's like these like things that happen after all that, like when Cloud goes on like that date with Aerith in Sector 5 slums.
Mm-hmm.
And like that it's like a different reality.
Yeah.
Because there's the different stamp. And it's just like, but what is the purpose of this?
Well, and it's
like
that's
the thing is like I was just gonna say, like, in general, a lot of the stuff that we see, whether it be Cloud stuff or Zack stuff, my main thing coming away with it is just like, what is the purpose of this?
Yeah.
Because when I first finished the game, I was just kind of really confused. I just like really didn't know what I just consumed. Yeah, I didn't. And I was talking to a bunch of people that already finished the game, and they were kind of on the same page, and they're like, and they asked me, what do you think happened at the end of that game? And I'm like, I can't answer that for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
And not in a good way, like in a bad way. And I just don't know. And like as the year has passed since that's happened, we started to like get a better idea of like what did happen, but what is it all for? Like why does it matter? Because yeah, we're hearing about reunion, like we're the merging of worlds, and it's like, okay, is that Sephiroth's plan? Is that it? Because I thought Meteor was his plan.
Yeah.
Like what happened? What does Sephiroth get out of these worlds being merged together?
He gets to Meteor all of them at once.
Yeah, maybe it's like a whole because yeah, it's I think there's so much to even like go off of and not even like focus on Sephiroth in a certain way too, like about this whole ending for sure. No, that's with because how I thought it was gonna go down. Like I thought this Sephiroth, which I think is still not out of the question, but I thought this Sephiroth that's in this trilogy, in this new remake version of Final Fantasy VII was a Sephiroth that was from like post Advent Children.
Yeah, like an alternate
So
timeline
he's
Sephiroth.
yeah, so like he's aware of like okay, like I need to make sure that these things happen in a certain way, but then also they can't do this stuff
Yeah.
to be able to, win. And like I don't know if that still stands. I think there's still some threads that point to Sephiroth being from post Advent Children and like he knows certain things. Aerith too. Aerith knows things at certain points in the game that she's not supposed to know.
Yeah.
Especially in Remake, like a lot so in Remake. A lot in Remake. So yeah.
That's absolutely a thread. And something I'm curious about too, because it feels like they kind of expanded on those elements a little bit, but also went different directions with them. Because it's a whole thing that Aerith knows things that she shouldn't, and Cloud even kind of calls her out a little bit on it in Rebirth, where it's like, hey, like, give me a straight answer, stop playing coy with me.
Right.
And there's this whole thing where, like, again, in Remake, Aerith literally gives Red 13 like a vision of the very end of the original game, like the final scene of that game that involves him. And so that's where that kind of time recurrence idea came up before. But now it's like, okay, is there time recurrence, but also like another layer with that where like, because that was never like alluded to in the original, that like Aerith would know the full story start to finish, right? Like that's a whole new thing with this trilogy. And I don't know. I don't know if this is like some weird live stream hallucination where it's replaying the events over and everyone's already in the afterlife and they're going through stuff. I don't know. Because that's what's weird about the Cloud and Aerith date too, is that it not only feels like an alternate timeline, it feels like almost a weird afterlife where like it's either everyone's prepared for their impending death or everyone's kind of like, oh, well, I've already died. Like everything's free. Take one, We always wish we had more time. Like, there's this very solemn vibe to that date where it's like, is this the live stream? Like, is everyone just dead right now? Is it another timeline where people are just resigned to their fate? What's happening?
Yeah. Kev, what did Aerith show Marlene to get her to stop crying? What did she show her? What did she show her? We don't even know, man. I don't know, man. Yeah. But no, go ahead.
Oh no, please go ahead.
I think at the end of the day, like with all this speculation and like confusion about the ending and such like that, I hope that we'll look back on it and we'll be like, Square, you made us as confused as like Cloud was. And we have this like meta, like we're more so in the shoes of Cloud, like, this like lost feeling, and then maybe it's all intentional and it all makes cohesive sense by the third game. We'll see. I'm not gonna rule that out, but it's gonna be quite a feat. It's gonna be quite a feat if they pull this off. I don't know, man. We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of like my like ends, like we'll just see how it plays out kind of mentality I have going into this third game for sure.
Well, and I think that's the sentiment a lot of us have had over the course of this conversation, where it's like, I don't know how entirely to feel right now. I'm not sure if it's a positive feeling or not, but like, I mean, overall enjoyed the game, like great gameplay, great, like,
for sure.
But in terms of the story, it's one of those things where I feel like we just need to see how this is paid off or not in 3. Whatever you want to call it, reunion, whatever. Cam, you were trying to go into another topic a bit ago, and we got sidetracked. What's on your mind, buddy?
The main thing, not the main thing. Something that I wanted to mention is, what are your guys' like kind of theories, thoughts on the tear in the sky at the end of the game that Cloud can see, but no one else can?
So it's season 11 of Doctor Who, or season 10, I forget. Anyways, this again plays into what exactly is going on in terms of like Cloud's mental state versus actual objectivity, right? Like, is he losing his shit and seeing stuff that he saw in the live stream or in whatever that other universe was? Or is this some kind of like his third eye is opened and he sees the impending merger of timelines that needs to be stopped? I mean, similar to a lot of things we've been talking about, I I don't feel particularly confident in any interpretation, right? Like, I think there's multiple ways it can be read, and I think there's enough evidence, or at least the appearance of evidence, to kind of like make those work.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up that is interesting that y'all may or may not remember is that Square updated dialogue from Remake.
Yep.
The last words of the game that Aerith says.
That's true.
Yeah, she used to say, "I miss it, the steel sky,"
Sky.
and now she says, "The sky, I don't like it."
Yeah. Now, has it?
And the first one's so much better.
Was it ever verified if like the second version is more authentic? Because it was the English script specifically that changed, right? It wasn't like the Japanese line also updated. It was specifically the English version, right?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I did not look into that, but I should have. But
yeah, translation's always a headache with situations like this.
I see.
Because it's like, is that new version more authentic to how it was said in Japanese? Did they also update the Japanese one? I don't know.
So according to a Polygon article, they said that they didn't say that there was like a purposeful reason behind it.
Yeah.
But they also said that so it was like maybe they wanted to change it for stylistic purposes.
Yeah.
But also, you know, I think that there's a purpose behind this.
Sure.
I think there's a purpose behind this.
This actually feeds into a question I wanted to ask. Sorry, you finish your thought, but this does feed into a question.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, you know, because when you look at "I Miss the Steel Sky," it's more like, because by this point in the game, or like even earlier, like probably since we meet Aerith, like she knows like what her destiny is. Like she knows like that she is fated to die.
Yeah.
And so like when she says that, it kind of was just like a tease of like I'm scared. Like I'm worried. I don't like that I am leaving Midgar, my home, to pursue what I am fated to do, which is die to save the world. And now it's like the sky, I don't like it. With how the sky is at the end of Rebirth, I'm wondering if that is more in line of like I don't, there's something going on with these timelines and I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And normally Aerith, like, you know, she doesn't tell anyone like these things. She keeps it to herself, and Nanaki to a certain extent. But she kind of keeps that stuff to herself, and this feels like this might be the first time where she doesn't really understand what's happening.
Yeah. I agree.
At least that's what I get out of it.
No, that's a fair read. That's what I thought when I saw the updated line, and knowing the context, especially now that I've seen the tear in the sky. Yeah, like that makes sense. There's again a part of Seven Remake is that it ends with you literally killing Fate, and so there's this idea of like things aren't playing out like how they're supposed to, and I don't like it. And this plays into what Kev was saying earlier in regards to like, is this Sephiroth a Sephiroth from a post-Advent Children timeline where he's messing with other worlds, and like, because that was a big read from Remake, was like there's two Sephiroths. There's like the Sephiroth of that timeline, and then there's the Sephiroth that's like survived from another one and is actively screwing with how this one's developing. You know, it's a theory that we haven't really gotten hard evidence of that.
No.
But it's a thing that does like line up a bit with how things are playing out. Because there's also that question of like, why is it diverging, right? Like, why were the Whispers even a thing coming up in 7 Remake?
Yeah.
What caused things to start being different? Other than the games being made. This does raise another question though, with you know, them having to update that line. The fact that they needed to update it in retrospect afterwards. How much of this do we get the feeling was actually planned from the start? Like, are they kind of just like, did they have a vague idea and they're kind of just making it up with each game? Is there like how clear was this framework from the beginning? Because the fact that they needed to change that line in preparation for Rebirth kind of makes it feel like maybe we're playing a little bit of
Yeah.
this by ear.
Are we talking framework or are we talking scenario? The scenario, definitely not.
Yeah, scenario is, I guess, what I'm more so saying.
No.
Yeah,
No, they've been working on the scenario as it goes along. I'm sure that there is a baseline framework
sure.
of what they wanted to do for sure, but yeah, I don't think the scenario was all set in motion from go.
Yeah.
That being said, they're still getting these games out pretty quick considering that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that is the case. And yeah, again, this is a lot of what we're talking about is just due to the game being the part 2 of a 3-part story.
Yeah.
And I hope that like a lot of the things that we're just like, what is this? What is that? That we're frustrated about because they kind of present it all in a way that just is like, yes, there can be theory crafting, but I wanted to go into this game having some answers solved with some new questions. Well, some questions solved and then some new questions arising. And then we just got more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Absolutely.
and that's the thing that like really frustrated me. Like I really wish that like by the end of this game, we really knew what was going on with Zach. We don't. Outside of, oh, yep, he's alive and he's in different timelines and we'll see what happens with him, which again, I think that the end game is just he's going to somehow, these worlds are going to collide, he's going to come back and he's going to be a part of this timeline moving forward. I think Zach is going to be a party member in the third game. I don't know to what level, but I think he's going to be a party member.
They better rebalance him because that dude's super OP. He's played in that boss fight. God damn.
But I do want to say, because we do have to wrap things up soon, that I do want to shout out the team up with Cloud and Zach against Sephiroth. What an incredible moment!
Dude, look,
you're on a fucking asteroid, and then when y'all do your synergy team up thing together, bro, I was screaming. I was like, it was Sora and Riku versus Xemnas.
Exactly what I was gonna say. Like,
again,
I love how there's this weird parallel of, and I know some people incorrectly attribute like, oh, this is Nomura doing Nomura things, and it's like he didn't write like a lot of what's happening in these remakes. Like he's not actually associated with a lot of this. But I do love the parallel of how like Remake kind of ends with a KH1 style boss fight of like you're in a void fighting a big thing and all this is playing out, and then 2 ends with a Sora Riku style team up against another like big bad guy. I found that very funny. It was cool though.
But one thing I will give this game credit for is that Square Enix really messed with my emotions from when you think that Aerith is dead to the end of the Sephiroth boss fight, because like they did give you at a certain point that sense of like, wait, is Aerith alive? Like, is she dead? Like, because she dies and then like everyone is like kind of mourning and like screaming their hearts out at this this Sephiroth boss avatar type thing with Aerith's theme playing in the background. I'm just like, oh, this is such an emotional, like, cool moment. And then by the time you get to the final phase of the Sephiroth fight, Aerith comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, wait, is she alive? Did she actually live? Like, what's going on? And then you find out that she is actually dead, and it's still, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just like Square Enix stuff at this point. It's like a Square Enix ism, but it was really cool how they were able to really make me doubt, like, wait, is she alive? Is she dead? Like, so yeah, shout out to them for that. But yeah, overall, like, I still love this game. Absolutely love this game.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
And I think that there's going to be a lot of conversation about this game once the third game comes out, and the story is, it's a game that
cemented.
People are going to retroactively like more or less over time.
Sure.
And
Good
I'm very curious as to how that happens. And also, like, we didn't talk about this, like, Just how that Sephiroth, that final boss fight ends is like really underwhelming. He just flies off. He just goes.
Yeah.
He just leaves.
I mean,
It's
it's
just like,
kind of, yeah, Remake did a similar thing where it's like you just had to have a cool Sephiroth fight to have a cool Sephiroth fight, and then Cloud is tripping balls at the edge of eternity apparently, and then it just goes kind of like, there you go, it's done. Like it,
but at least like the whispers were dealt with. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
Like the goal was there.
Yeah.
This one's
Yeah.
just like, oh, Sephiroth just kind of fucked off, and like we'll see him again. Like we'll see him again in a way that wasn't the first game, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that was a little frustrating. But Kev, last thoughts?
Great game.
Is it your favorite
It's
game of all time now? Do you like it more than Remake?
Rebirth. I don't think I don't like it more than Remake.
I agree with you. I think Remake is
I
a better
don't
game
think
overall.
I do. But there's so much that Rebirth does like insanely good.
it's ambitious.
And it's impressive, I'd say, like definitely impressive as a package, as an experience, absolutely. And I don't know how much bias there is to like the act of literally falling in love with an IP with Remake and like getting to know these characters and you know that different dynamic of approach. That could be why like I just have a more just soft spot for Remake as a whole, but I don't think I like Rebirth more than Remake. But I can acknowledge that it's probably a better gameplay game for sure. Like there's a lot of things that are better, but it's just something about it. Something about it.
It's some versus the parts, right? Like that's a
Yeah. You, Kev, what do you think? Is Remake better or Rebirth better?
I would land also on Remake better. And going back to what I was
Yeah.
saying about like, you know, some versus parts, I think there's a lot of things that Rebirth does individually better. I like the updates to combat. I love synergy skills. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
as a
yeah.
huge Chrono Trigger
Oh,
fan,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, give me dual techs, give me combos in any game you can. I eat that up. I love it. There's a lot of things where individually I think Rebirth does better. What I think detracts it for me in the overall scope when I'm thinking about Remake versus Rebirth is that it's scope. It's like scope creep. Like Rebirth is trying to do so much, and it is such a densely packed game, and it is, you know, you described it earlier as almost like the ultimate AAA game. Like how much is in this thing, and like it's true.
insane.
Like it's
Insane.
wild how much is in this. But I also think that sometimes less is more. And I think Remake hits that a little bit where there's a tightness to it, there's a focus to it that I ultimately feel more fondly about in the end. Part of this might also just be because of how Rebirth has me feeling a little like, what the fuck right now? And not knowing where it's going to go. Again, I think this game's going to be defined by 3 very heavily, and maybe I'll go back and be like, masterpiece, cinema.
Yeah.
Rebirth's ridiculous.
But right now, I would say I think Remake is the stronger tight package, and Rebirth is a whole lot of stuff that's great, but it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah. I agree. As I started the whole I like Remake more trend, but I also, oh man, I was there's something I was going to say and I completely forgot what it was now. Well, unfortunate.
5 minutes
It's
on the clock, Sam. You got this.
ADHD did it again, y'all.
That's
it's very similar to like Spyverse for me. Where like Into the Spyverse as a standalone movie is like literally perfection to me, right?
So good.
Mm-hmm.
Then now we have Across, where I think there are better things that happen in Across the Spyverse, but I don't know if we can really judge it because it's predicated on the third film, you know.
Yeah.
I think Rebirth might be heavily, well, I think we've said here, like it's very predicated on what happens afterwards, and we'll make a true, you know, judgment.
Yeah.
On Rebirth.
It's like, well, Remake was setting up a sequel and did have its cliffhanger. It felt more final than Rebirth did.
Absolutely.
I remember what I was gonna say now. Yeah, Kev, like you're just in a very precarious situation just because you just beat that game last night, and so your brain is in overdrive probably right now. And it took me like a month to
it was a while for me
to not like think about that ending at least a few times a day. Like it's just It's just that kind of ending.
Yeah.
But but I also think that that's what Square wanted.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, because like Square made it clear, like, we want you to like think about this ending. And like, while I don't think it was the good kind of think, I think they succeeded. And yeah, and I even if, like, for example, like, I would give this game like a 9 out of 10 personally.
Mm.
I don't think that if they nailed that ending, that opinion would change. I think it would still sit around that number for me, because there are other things that I take issue with.
Mm-hmm.
Because I, like, even though I do think Remake is a 10 out of 10, there are still like small things that like I take issue with, but like nothing like that's major. I just think that like that was just such an achievement that and it just nailed everything, and it gave me the same kind of vibe that Final Fantasy 13 gave me when I first played it, where I was like, wow, this is what a JRPG can be. Like, this is what this can be, you know, like. And I think that Final Fantasy has been the franchise that has kind of continuously like given those thoughts to players. Like, you play 6 and you're like, wow, this is what a JRPG can be. Then 7, wow, this is what a JRPG can be. Play 10, wow, this is what a JRPG can be. Play 13, wow. Like even if you don't like 13 for its, like, for the game itself, like, just like the scope and like the beauty behind it, it's really impressive. And so like that's what Remake gave me, on top of it just being a phenomenal game. Kevin Diaz, where can the people find you? Thank you for coming on.
Watch IGN trailers. If you're gonna watch a trailer, watch it on IGN. You know what I'm saying? Support the team. Also PlayStation Source, as well as Twitter, aka X, I guess, but Twitter. You know what I'm saying? At
Are you on Blue Sky?
KDS123. I am on Blue Sky. I just
You need to get on there, dude.
join
Most
us on
people
the
are
Blue
on there
Sky.
now.
I'm on there. It's just
It's happier, relatively. I mean, it's getting
Yeah,
a
man,
little.
You just gotta bounce between them. You just gotta bounce between them.
I just don't want to start over. It's like, I think I want to just be done. You know what I'm saying?
Just
Like,
cross
I don't
post.
know, man.
It's like,
It's a whole thing.
If you
It's a
put
whole
something
thing.
on X, just
It's a
put it
whole
on
thing.
Blue Sky. Like, it's, treat it
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Marvel at how the comments are somehow so much more positive on the other one. Anyways,
for sure.
Cam, wrap it up. Take us home, Cam.
You can find Kevin Kenson at Kevin Kenson on social medias, youtube.com/Kevin Kenson. You can find me at Cam Final Mix on all the social platforms. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this Final Fantasy VII Rebirth 1 year later Spoilercast. Until next time, we'll catch you later.
Later.